you got something specific, get it done. And just to get her to sit down and actually have a theoretical discussion.
Gordon, all I've been at, to go into the
Counselor
on Archer Elevator in whatever that other street is there. I just want to get arrows going in and arrows coming out, you know, because it's confusing there, and I guess it had some vendors or whatever. So
I'll listen to it.
A lot of people say that.
I think we're ready. The May 15th, 2018 meeting of the City Council of the City of Springfield, Illinois is called to order. Please rise. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
you're not on.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Clerk, if you please call the roll.
Will do. Alderman Redpath.
Here.
Alderman Senor.
Here.
Alderman Turner.
Here.
Alderman Fulgenzi.
Here.
Alderman Proctor.
Here.
Alderman DeCenso.
Present.
Alderman McMiniman.
Here.
Alderman Tylen.
Here.
Alderman Donlin.
Here.
Alderman Hanauer.
Here.
Mayor Langfelder.
Here.
Mr. Mayor, a quorum is present.
Thank you. We do have one proclamation, so I'd ask Alderman Fulgenzi to step forward, as well as the Springfield Kings hockey teams and their coaches.
Better watch it, John. You'll get checked.
Let's get all players.
Let's open up a few chairs.
Right here.
Everybody behind the podium for me.
Call them and tell them they're that. Jim. Kate? Gabriel, nice to see you. Thank you.
Thank you for doing this.
Yeah. Come on up, Alderman.
What are these guys playing? Lincoln Park? I don't know where they play.
Did you guys play at Lincoln Park? You guys play at Lincoln Park?
Lyle's us.
Lyles.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's anytime we can recognize our youth in our communities and communities around us, it gives us great pride, because that's what our future is all about. And Springfield Kings hockey has been around Springfield for a long, long time, and we appreciate Coach Gabe Lyles and his other coaches, the parents for their support, and the team, which you'll hear shortly, is in recognition of their championship. For myself, hockey goes way back to my father's upbringing, which was in Vienna, Austria. And actually, my grandfather was a referee at the time, and he would actually ref between countries, Austria and Germany. And he always said he'd have to sneak out if Austria would lose, because they wouldn't be too happy with him. But it is a great sport. We appreciate you teaching it to our youth, because it's a growing sport around the world. So with that, the proclamation reads, whereas today we recognize and celebrate the accomplishments of some of our youngest athletes who not only achieved wins and titles, but who worked tirelessly together for fun and play, fair play, and competition. And whereas founded in 1961, the Springfield Youth Hockey Association, SYHA, has a proud tradition of providing recreational and competitive hockey that fosters and teaches good sportsmanship and fair play, and an individual and team competition for youth players from the greater Springfield area. And whereas Lincoln Park's Nelson Center was built in the early 1970s and became home to the SYHA, and teams who play for the association are known as the Springfield Kings. SYHA is a member of the Central Illinois Hockey League, the Missouri Amateur Ice Hockey Association Youth Division, and nationally USA Hockey. And whereas players on the Springfield Kings are not only from our city, but drive from all over to be part of the SYHA, including players from Bloomington, Decatur, Dawson, New Berlin, Pleasant Plains, Rochester, Verdon, and Williamsville. And whereas on March 3rd and 4th of this year, 5 Springfield Kings teams advanced to the Championship Blue Note Cup, which was formerly the state championship tournament, including Squirt B1 and Squirt B2 10 and under teams, the Pee Wee A2 12 and under team, the midget major team, and the bantam A2 team. And whereas these young athletes played hard and with determination, and in the end, Squirt B1, Pee Wee A2, and Bantam A2 teams all brought home the championship Blue Note Cup in their divisions for the Springfield Kings. And whereas the strength and heart of a team stems from their coaches, parents, and supporters, and that is true of the Springfield Kings, whose dedication, spirit, and pride should be recognized by the Springfield community. And whereas the Springfield Kings season lasts from August through March, teaching these young athletes the important lessons of commitment, being part of a team has shown them collaboration, and this season showed that when the focus on the goal, there is no obstacles. Now, therefore, I, James O. Langfelder, Mayor of the City of Springfield, on behalf of the residents and City Council, do hereby proclaim that Tuesday, May 15, 2018, shall be Springfield Kings Hockey Day in the City of Springfield, and call upon all citizens to formally recognize the 2017-2018 season of the Springfield Youth Hockey Association Springfield Kings. Congratulations.
Thank you. My name's Gabe Lyles. I'm the president of the Springfield Youth Hockey Association. I got put in place a couple of years ago, and these young men and coaches standing behind me dedicate a lot of time into what's taking place here. It's more just about being hockey players here. We're shaping these into the adults of our future. These guys pour everything they got into it, including the coaches and our association's an entire volunteer association. So I'm really proud of the community that we affect. You know, we have over 400 families just from the greater Illinois area that come and join us annually. Our programs are top-notch, and they're all ran by volunteers, and it's just a great thing. So I really appreciate it, Mayor Langfelder.
Thank you.
Now we'll get out of your hair, sir.
Oh, thank you. Congratulations.
Good job, guys.
Good job, guys.
I didn't know that. Oh, have you thrown?
Actually, yeah, 5'8".
Why didn't you still head taller than me? Why
I'm a head taller than him. Because.
Okay, we'll go ahead and start the zoning portion of our meeting. First item on the agenda is docket number 2018-012 for the property located at 1540 Wabash Avenue in Ward 7. Petitioner is JIAS Liquor Corporation, present zoning classification B2 General Business Service District, Section 155.034. Requested zoning relief reclassification to B1 Highway Business Service District, Section 155.033, and a conditional permitted pursuant to Section 155.033C7, taverns and microbreweries exclusive of drive-in or drive-up windows for the sale of alcohol, and 155.200, taverns, microbreweries, country clubs, and golf courses, clubhouses with liquor sales by the drink, and 155.033C8, conditional permitted uses in the B1 Highway Business Service District, packaged liquor sales exclusive of drive-in or drive-up windows for the sale of alcohol, and 155.210, packaged liquor sales. Springfield Sangamon County Regional Planning Commission recommendation is approval of the B1 zoning and a CPU pertaining to a packaged liquor store and a CPU pertaining to a tavern, provided the tavern and packaged liquor stores uses are limited to the existing building footprint of approximately 4,800 square feet, and that the hours of operation are consistent with the city liquor license. Planning and Zoning Commission recommendation is accept the Springfield Sangamon County Regional Planning Commission recommendation. Chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, motion to continue this this zoning docket number 2018-012 to the City Council meeting of Tuesday, June 19, 2018.
Is there a second to continue this to June 19th?
That's correct, Mayor.
And second, any discussion? All those in favor of the motion to continue, did I just say aye?
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion passes. And one present. The next item on the agenda is docket number 2018-013 for the property located at 1420 South Glenwood in Ward 6. Petitioner is ACCA, Inc. Present zoning classification is R2, single family and duplex residence district, section 155.017. Requested zoning relief, reclassification of R2, single family and duplex residential district, section 155.017 to B1 highway business service district, section 155.033. And the alternative, petitioner additionally requests consideration for a use variance allowing construction of a garage for storage in the R2 zoning district. Springfield Sangamon County Regional Planning Commission recommendation is denial. Planning and Zoning Commission recommendation is accept. Springfield and Sangamon County Regional Planning Commission recommendation to deny. Do I need to read the exception now?
No.
Okay. Chair will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the petition as submitted.
Second.
Been moved and second to approve the petition as submitted. Any discussion? All those in favor of the request to approve the petition as submitted, vote yes. Those opposed, vote no. The voting is now open. And the zoning passes 10 voting yes, none voting no. Next item on the agenda is docket number 2018-014 for the property located at 1315 South College in Ward 6. Petitioner is Glenn Ball. Present zoning classification is R2, single family and duplex residence district, section 155.017. Requested zoning relief, a variance of section 155.056. Minimum required lot area per dwelling unit to allow continued use of a duplex on a lot containing 5,767 square feet of land instead of the 6,000 square feet required. Springfield Sangamon County Regional Planning Commission recommendation is approval. Planning and Zoning Commission recommendation is accept the Springfield Sangamon County Regional Planning Commission recommendation to approve. Chair will entertain a motion.
I move to accept the staff recommendation and approve the petition.
Second.
Been moved and second to accept the staff recommendation to approve the petition. And second, any discussion? All those in favor of the motion vote yes. Those opposed vote no. The voting is now open. And the zoning petition passes 10 voting yes, none voting no. Next item on the agenda is docket number 2018-015 for the property located at 3433 Gatlin Drive in Ward 4. Petitioner is GT Leasing, LLC, a.k.a. Gully Truck Leasing Company, LLC. Present zoning classification is I2, Heavy Industrial District, section 155.041. Requested zoning relief, a variance of section 155.112, surfacing to allow construction of an open off-street parking and vehicle storage area of dustless rock without requiring a wearing surface of asphaltic, concrete, or comparable hard surface. 155.136, regulations for surfacing of off-street loading facilities to allow to construct open off-street loading spaces of dustless rock without requiring a durable hard surface pavement. 155.143, plan of off-street parking or loading areas to proceed with constructing an open off-street parking and vehicle storage of dustless rock without requiring plans for accessory off-street parking areas or a building permit, and 155.480. Landscape screening and lighting, regulations to allow construction of a parking area without requiring a landscape plan, including but not limited to installation and maintenance of parking lot landscaping, screening and lighting, and the points related thereto. for a period of 5 years to comply with the requirements of those sections of the Springfield zoning code. Springfield Sangamon County Regional Planning Commission recommendation is approval of the variation of 155.112, surfacing, 155.136, loading spaces, and 155.143, parking plan for a period not to exceed 24 months, but recommend denial of the request of a variance of 155.480 landscaping. Planning and Zoning Commission recommendation is accept the recommendation of the Springfield Sangamon County Regional Planning Commission, accept approving a variance of section 155.480, landscape screening and lighting regulations for a period of 24 months, and for the surface to require a dust palliative. Chair will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept it as recommended by the zoning commission.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to accept it as recommended by the Planning and Zoning Commission recommendation. Any discussion? All those in favor, vote yes. Those opposed, vote no. The voting is now open. And the zoning request passes 10 voting yes, none voting no. Next item on the agenda is docket number 2018-017 for the property located at 7100 and 7200 Woodland Trail in Ward 1. Petitioner is Christopher Weimer as lake leaseholder. Present zoning classification is R1, Single Family Residence District, Section 155.016. Requested zoning relief, reclassification of property from R1, Single Family Residence District, Section 155.016 to OFF off district section 155.020 and a variance of section 155.112 surfacing to permit the installation of gravel CA-6, a pervious compact gravel for the off-street parking and driveway area instead of a solid dust-free surface required by code and 155.097A required accessory off-street parking spaces. Office buildings to allow 20 off-street parking spaces instead of the 32 required based on the approximate floor area of 6,300 square feet, and a variance of paragraph 3 setbacks of Appendix A of the Lake Use Plan for Lake Springfield and its marginal properties for a minimum setback of distance for buildings or structures of 70 feet from the lake shoreline instead of the 75 feet required. If the reclassification to office district and for a variance of 155.112 are not granted, it is requested in the alternative that a use variance be granted for a professional office space and a 24-month period to be allowed to bring surface into compliance with section 155.112. Springfield Sangamon County Regional Planning Commission recommendation is denial. Planning and Zoning Commission recommendation is grant a use variance for a professional office, a variance of section 155.097A, required accessory off-street parking spaces, office buildings allowing 20 spaces instead of 32 spaces in section 155.112, surfacing for a period of 24 months to come into compliance with a surfacing requirements and approval of a variance of paragraph 3 setbacks of Appendix A of the land use plan for Lake Springfield and its marginal properties to allow a setback of 70 feet from the lake shoreline instead of 75 feet. Chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a recommendation. We accept the staff recommendation for denial of the petition.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to accept staff recommendation from Springfield Sangamon County Regional Planning Commission recommendation to deny the petition. Seconded. Any discussion? I don't know if we'll call up the... Yeah, we're going to call up individuals that, if you want to come up and speak first. And if
Mayor, before we get started with the
right.
testimony, could we make sure that we stay within the parameters of the 5-minute limit on the presentations? I know that they have a couple different people that want to speak. That's fine, but we need to keep it down. I'm sure the City Council is very aware of this situation as well as the public, and we would like to get through this. Thank you.
Yep, go ahead. If you'd state your name and address for the council, we'd appreciate it.
Yes, my name is Patrick J. Sheehan III. I'm an attorney here in Springfield at Sheehan & Sheehan Lawyers. I work with my dad and my brother. Our firm has been around since 1960. I'm here on behalf of my client, Chris Weimer. He's the lake leaseholder of this Woodland Trail property. I prepared a PowerPoint presentation that I was hoping could be broadcast on the TV screen.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Just to give you guys a brief overview of this property and this request, I prepared a presentation. We've got the property right here. This is Woodland Trail property. As you can see, it's in somewhat disrepair. Just by way of introduction, I'm here on behalf of Chris Weimer. Contract purchaser is Luke Schutte. He's here with us tonight. There's zoning contingency in our contract that we need zoning relief for this project to go forward. I'm not going to go through this really, but the biggest issue I think we need to stress is that this property has long been a problem. It's been a thorn in the side for the city of Springfield, and what we're offering tonight is a solution. It's a solution to a long-standing problem that has been challenging for the CWLP, for Springfield Police Department, and my client has been the victim of vandalism numerous times at this site. I think it's important for context purposes that we consider what the current zoning impacting this property is. I've got it up there on the screen. I'm not going to read through it, but we're going to expand on this a little bit. This was subject of a 1991 ordinance signed by the Honorable Ozzie Langfelder, ironically enough. Uses that are permitted by this variance include restaurant with the service of alcoholic beverages, commercial boating facility, the sale of motor boat fuel, which includes the storage of motor boat or motor fuel tanks underground, a bait shop, and a commercial meeting hall. Then the lakeshore lease that is currently in place expands upon those uses. It says we can operate a restaurant with the service of alcoholic beverages until 1 a.m. It also allows us to maintain commercial boating facilities, which would include boat sales, boat rentals. Again, it allows us to sell motorboat fuel. We can store fuel underground on the property. Also allows us to operate a bait shop. As I said, commercial meeting hall, and then also a public beach facility, as well as a caretaker watchman's quarters. So just to illustrate these, I've got some pictures of what could go out there if we decided we wanted to go that route. If we submitted permits with building and zoning, we feel we can do these projects with what is permitted by this zoning ordinance. We could do a restaurant with the service of alcoholic beverages until 1 a.m. Just by way of illustration, we could open a Shooters out there. If we wanted to start the process tomorrow with building and zoning, apply for the permits, the current use that's allowed allows us to do that. Also allows us to operate a commercial boating facility. Motorboat fuel station is also permitted. There's a bait shop that we could use out there right now. Skip the slide. We could also operate a commercial meeting hall. That picture you'll notice is familiar when Luke makes his presentation. That's actually a rendering of his proposed development of this structure. It's really just a renovation of the existing footprint of the building. And finally, watchman's quarters. So what I'm trying to stress here is that these uses, which are permitted by way of this 1991 ordinance, whether we like it or not, are stuff that are very intense. What we're proposing is something much less intense, something that would house Luke's companies. He's expecting to have 12 to 15 regular full-time employees out there at this site. Again, there's been a lot of information, misinformation about what this project is. There was some literature being circulated that this was a skyscraper development of some sort on the lake. That cannot be further from the truth. So again, by way of illustration, I'm showing you that that's not what this is. And you'll see some very specific renderings of what Luke is proposing that is exactly what this is. Okay, so we've got certain standards required for a variance. Now, we've been before the Planning and Zoning Commission twice, and both times they found that the standards were met. It's their job to apply the facts to these standards. Each time we were before them, they found these standards were met. I think it's also important for context to consider why we have variances. One of the reasons and the main purpose is to give flexible methods for relaxing rigid requirements in zoning ordinances on an individual need. So we got to look for unusual circumstances specific to certain situations, which is exactly the case here. We've got a property that has water service. The water service is not adequate to really suit any of the uses I've outlined. Luke has some plans for the water pressure at this site. You know, it's really a lot. This problem really limits us to what we can do out there, and it's got to be something that's a less intense use than what's permitted out there right now, and something less intense than residential, which also won't work with this zoning, or excuse me, this water pressure issue. So again, I think this case presents a classic situation for a variance. And we recognize we've asked for rezoning. We don't think that's appropriate. We're more than willing to accept a use variance, as I will explain. We've heard a lot about precedent that this may set. I just don't think that is true. And the reason is this doesn't set a precedent because it's specific to this property and the unique circumstances that relate to this property. So the other thing, too, to consider with the precedent is the city's got control mechanisms in place here that will restrict the viability of a commercial development. One of those is the zoning procedure, which we are before you right now on. The other is the specific uses that are outlined in each lakeshore lease that is specific to each property. Those controls limit the ability of anybody to come out and do any sort of other commercial development out here. And we have to remember what's permitted out there right now is commercial. It's 100% commercial. There's no way around that. I'm not going to really go through this in too much detail, but the City of Springfield comprehensive plan that was just passed actually addresses redevelopment. It says we need to give preference to reusing structures and redeveloping structures that have become either impossible to use as they were once built, or in any other way try to just improve the structure that's already there and not necessarily build from the ground up. We've also got some stuff in the city plan, in this comprehensive plan, about reuse, and I think it's important to consider those items that are specifically mentioned in the comprehensive plan about adaptive reuse and encouraging redevelopment of properties that are obsolete or deteriorated, which is exactly the case here. So just as a summary, what we're asking for tonight is exactly as you see it on the screen. We're asking for a variance that permits us to use the property as professional office space. Again, we're preserving the blueprint of this building. It's a simple renovation, as Luke calls it. We're also asking for a variance of the setbacks requirements of the Lake Land Use Plan. We asked for 5 feet. We really only need about 13 inches. So we're flexible on that. We submitted the request for 5 feet. We'll take whatever you feel is appropriate. And the last two items are parking variances, one for surfacing and then one for the number of spaces. And to, I guess, eliminate any concerns that the council may have about this project not go to completion, we request that you make it condition upon, all this be conditioned upon the transaction closing. So as you're considering all this and you have your finger on that no button, I want you to consider all these things. What a no vote means tonight. A no vote is it's a vote against $1 million private investment in the city of Springfield. It's also a vote against a project that asks for not one dime up from the city in incentives. We've seen a lot of people coming forward before the council lately asking for money. We're not asking for that. A no vote is also a vote against expanding the property tax base. I think it also is a vote against job creation. We're going to have construction jobs here for this project, and we're going to have professional level jobs within Luke's companies. So a vote against this project is a vote against job creation. It's also a vote against innovation and entrepreneurship. Again, it's a vote against a solution to a long-standing problem property that has been a thorn in the side of the city for a long time. Also, the vote against this tonight a no vote tonight means that you're voting against something which would avoid the city from having to confront a major water line repair issue for this property. The cost of that is going to be significant. And finally, there's two more items to consider. A no vote is a vote against what the Planning and Zoning Commission has twice recommended for approval. And finally, if you vote no, I think you're sending a very strong message to businesses and developers that Springfield really is not open for business. At this time, I'm going to turn the floor over to Luke, unless the council has any questions for me.
Questions? No, I don't think so.
That presentation's still mine. It's attached to his. Would you like me to state my name for record?
Oh, yes, please.
It's Luke Schutte. I'm the president and CEO of a company called Renew Tech. Apologize the formatting. We kind of pulled these together last minute here, but basically the reason I'm here is I'd like to present who we are as a company, and then also this project. I did bring a component here that represents an application of our materials. Some of you may know my history. I actually founded my first company in 2007. I sold it off in 2016, and I started this new company called Renew Tech that's focused 100% on certified structural grade members and materials for the architectural and construction industry. Some of you may know I actually have a manufacturing facility. We're developing it and adding employees out at the industrial park near Cracker Barrel there, next to Sangamon Reclaimed. I'd encourage all of you, if you'd like to come and see what we're doing. It's really exciting. We're doing a lot of work with our materials and technologies out there. We're expecting to potentially create up to 30 jobs out at that location. It's a 10,500 square foot building, and we're hoping to do that in the coming years. I'd like to just go over briefly our company as a whole. Basically, you maybe have heard of bamboo, and you may be wondering, here we are in Illinois, but basically we are in the center of the U.S. We have an amazing logistics hub in association with some of the other companies that are in this area, and then reaches up to Chicago area, where we can do distribution of our materials and technologies to the nation within about 5 business days. About the materials, they are extremely sustainable and very high performance for architectural applications. We have focused in on our technology to serve our materials for these higher-end OEM markets. Bamboo does grow everywhere, but our focus is actually the Western Hemisphere, Central and South American locations, and we are actually actively procuring materials out of Ecuador and various regions that are also causing economic stimulus within these developing nations. As I said, the timeline goes back to 2007 when the materials were integrated up into mid-2017, where new certifications as well as a new patent had been filed to allow us to implement our materials into a lot of developing applications and technologies throughout the world. This is the applications that we're looking at, structural grade applications in buildings. This is an actual project. You may recognize the vehicle on the right is a BMW i8. Our materials were integrated for the launch of the BMW i8, and we're continuing our relationship with BMW for dealer development, charging structures internationally. So this is not just the U.S. There's over 330 dealers in the U.S. We're actually implementing our materials into international integrations of charging infrastructure, not only in the dealers, but also with BMW partners that they're working with. This is actually a showcase application where the structure was on display on Navy Pier. Our company and our materials technology is actually making a pretty powerful statement around sustainability and innovation for Illinois. We're really proud of that. Another application where we were showcasing the materials. This is another example of a company that is integrating our materials. This is called Electrify America. They're vetted to spend about $2 billion over the next 10 years on charging infrastructure, and one of the major paths is actually coming right through Illinois. We have a major corridor coming obviously on I-55 as well as intersecting corridors on I-70, I-80, and this is their vision for the future fueling stations of tomorrow for electric vehicles. We've done another project, actually this one is in Illinois, also a roof structure down in Marion. These are some more examples. This is a curtain wall application. If any one is familiar with when you go into a hotel and you see large expanses of glass, this is essentially the system that has been developed by myself and the company. This is another example of it, actually a hard sample right here to my right, that showcases the materials being integrated in spider-connected glass. This is just another example of how we're integrating our materials into some very showcase and innovative applications. These applications are not only being integrated in Illinois, but also nationally and internationally. Curtain wall systems, as I stated, window systems. If I can go back, our materials represent up to 5 lead points. These lead points, if you're familiar with LEED, stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, which is a very strong initiative put forth by Illinois that many state and government-run and funded projects are integrating sustainable materials that meet LEED requirements. Exterior applications. Some of our board have represented some very premium companies worldwide. Our long-term plan actually is to establish more distribution locations. Our location that we're establishing in the industrial park is one of them, and we're looking to expand our distribution on the east and west coast as well as the southeast. I'd like to get into the project briefly here. I know that we're running short on time, but many of you are aware of it. But I did want to take, because I believe it's important for you to understand why I'm here and why I feel like this is an opportunity to bring innovation to Springfield. The site that we are proposing, as Pat articulated, is out there on the lake. It's a building that's been vacant for about 13 years. We are proposing a site and a project that will encourage job creation, entrepreneurship. I know that, as Pat stated, there have been requests for funds for various different incubator applications. I'm not asking for that. I'm proposing that we can encourage innovation and entrepreneurship here in Springfield by allowing me to potentially put an office space. Why on the lake, you might ask? Why in this area? The lake is part of it. The other area is that the people that we're trying to attract like and prefer to work in spaces that are healthy for them. As far as their connection to nature, this campus feel is something that is very valuable to people that are graduating out of U of I. If they move to U of I and they're from Springfield, I just hope that we can do something in Springfield that will make them want to move back, as opposed to just moving on and going to a different state, different city. We actually are conducting research currently. We've just been approved for 2 new research projects at the University of Illinois. So not only are we incorporating the University of Illinois Champaign-Urbana into our research and development, we're also actively and have historically over 10 UIS interns have come through my company or affiliate companies. And we can plan to continue to do that. Being in close proximity of UIS is certainly an ideal situation for us. We do want to make it a nice office, but it is, as Pat stated, it's a very strong, as far as its visibility, as far as the activity that will take place. We're not having liquor being served till 1 a.m. We're not doing these things. We want to promote a family type of environment so that families can actually meet for lunch out at the local park, as opposed to restricting traffic and movement out to this site. I would propose that maybe private sector and business focus as a positive format would be ideal for all the security problems that have been out there, all the problems with the building that's been destroyed by various different vandals. I believe that rather than putting that labor and that on the backs of the local police and the city, why not allow the private sector to take ownership of that and really make it a great space to work and to be? We absolutely want to make use of the park. You go out there now, it's like a ghost town. Nobody goes out there. And we want to change that. One of the concerns was, we're going to increase traffic. I hope so. I hope we increase positive traffic out there, people that care about where they're going and are going to their job, and they take pride in that area. That's what I'm hoping. As Pat referenced, we are proposing some very strong sustainability initiatives within the building. We will still be absolutely tied into the grid, but we are going to have a 100-panel roof solar system that will actually offset. It's a 30 kW system. It will offset a significant portion of our building. We're also wanting to potentially be able to charge electric vehicles on this site, maybe one or two if any of our employees perhaps want to have one on site. We are doing a water capture system, which per the rainfall in this latitude in Illinois, we have plenty of rainfall that could accommodate our gray water usage, which would eliminate the water pressure problem. Basically, it's about a $5,000 in-house, in-building water system that allows the water recapture to be integrated and utilized for gray water, for flushing toilets and things like that. And then the minimal pressure that's coming in from the city will be primarily utilized for drinking water. One of the other concerns was brought up with regards to fire suppression. We actually are proposing a system that is used throughout the state of Illinois as well as many other locations throughout the country, a dry pipe system that allows a system to be integrated. It does require annual maintenance, but it's a very straightforward system. It allows a component to go out into the lake in case of a fire. There is a draw from the lake. It can even be metered if required, but that's in the case of emergency. This is a very accepted system, code approved, and we'd obviously comply to any requirements required by building and zoning. This is the building. If you look at that front cube there where you see the scale figures, that's actually the original cube that you see in the original space. You saw in some of the shots there, we are essentially utilizing the existing footprint and doing two very small additions and essentially dropping in a new roof system that integrates my materials as well as some glazing. As you can see from the scale of the building, it is not a 40 or 50-story building as potentially presented like down in Florida or something. This is a single-story building. The main level is about 6,300 square feet, and that's essentially all it is. We are anticipating, between 12 and 15 full-time employees here, which is why we're proposing the fewer parking spaces due to the lower square footage and the less density. There is, by the way, about 30 parking spaces adjacent to the property in case there is an overflow. If you remember from your trips out there, perhaps back 10 years ago, there is a significant amount of parking right next to the ball diamond that nobody uses, and those could be utilized for overflow if required. The resolution is squashed a little bit, but this is essentially the building that we're proposing. It is a single level, and there would be a lower level walkout, which is essentially what the building is right now. It just has a little bit different roof. The roof is designed for architectural appeal, of course, but it's also designed to aid in the recapture of rainwater. That flagpole is actually on site and it is in existence. We're going to keep that as well as all the trees. There is one tree near the front that we can replace, and we will plant in the required trees required by the city. This is the proposed site. I can go back here. Basically, you can see the two very small additions there that does bring it pretty close to the setback line. But essentially, if you remember from historical photos, there was a lot of concrete, hard surface. That's all since been removed. And in fact, we are not increasing the hard surface on the site. Our small additions actually take up less hard surface than what is there with what was there with the concrete and balconies and patios. This is showing the roof plan, the solar system. This is giving an idea of the section. That lower level, you can get a scale of the space. It's going to be a great place to work. We want to utilize it to promote innovation, to showcase materials. And what's exciting about this is even though it's a very simple and very small renovation, if you think about it, 6,300 square feet on the main level, I can bring top executives from the greatest companies ever into this site, and it will be an excellent representation of our materials and technologies. We don't have to have some amazing multi-story building to represent who we are as a company. We're going to promote sustainability and innovation within our company. Overview of the floor plan. You can kind of see there down at the lower right, above the logo there, you can see existing and new. There is that small addition to this towards the lake that will be added. Lower level. as I stated, right around 63, 64 square feet for the main level, and the lower level will be 3,200 square feet, but that's going to be primarily, private and storage space. I know O'Shea Builders is a great company, and I'm not trying to do any name dropping, but this is a project that they're behind. They are the GC on this project for the primary framing elements. It's going to be their system, their company that's overseeing the primary components of the contracting. And I'm proud to state that I've worked with them in the past. They're a great company, and I look forward to working with them again. Any questions, please?
Any questions?
Sure.
Alderman Hanauer.
A couple things. I know you guys have said that basically if this is turned down, that we're saying that the city of Springfield isn't open for business, and I disagree with that. What we're saying is I mean, your business is really a cool business, and it looks, I mean, it's pretty impressive. There's plenty of spots in Springfield that we would welcome you. It just, I think that my concern is about keeping the integrity of Lake Springfield. You guys have mentioned the comprehensive plan. I believe, I don't have it here with me, but the comprehensive plan also shows that area as conservation. So, I mean, it's kind of, can't use it for you, and with what it says. So, the other concern, have you thought, how do you know that by you guys going out there, you're not going to get vandalized? Because here's the problem: police can't be out there. I was on lake patrol out there. Yeah, it takes forever for police to get out there. So you got an alarm system. Guess what? It'll be 15, 20, 30 minutes before they get out there. By then, So I'm just saying you could be vandalized as well out there, absolutely, as well as any other business that goes out there. Sure. And then, I will tell you, we'll find you a spot out in Ward 10 if you want to come.
Appreciate it.
Not if he wants nature. That's an
And I'm sure that there's a lot of other wards out here.
For that.
There's a lot of other wards that we can find spots for you.
Appreciate it.
But I think the concern is in this location, I'm concerned about the integrity of the lake, and I understand what you said, Pat, but it does open it up. It opens up Pandora's box to other companies going out trying to open up, and then next thing you know, the lake's gonna be one big business park. That's my concern, and I don't want to see that. I don't think that was the intention when the lake was originally built, and I don't want it to be the intention now. So I just wanted to bring that up. Thank you.
Okay, appreciate it.
Any other questions or comments? We do have some people that signed up to speak. First is Stephen Scott. If you could state your name and address for the council, we'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Langfelder, aldermen and alderwomen. My name is Stephen Scott, 8 Island Bay Lane, Springfield. I'm a lake resident and a city resident for that entire period of time. I'm here with a number of people from the Lake Springfield who are vitally concerned, residents of Lake Springfield, and concerned about this project. And for us, this project involves changing the character of the lake. Since 1939, the lake has been an area for natural aesthetics, reserved for all the citizens' water use and water sources, recreation, residential, and lake club use. Putting a business on here and an office building on here, I think, as Alderman Hanauer previously said, begins this system. Whenever we have some failure of a club, rather than have a new club come in and move into that area as originally intended, and hopefully the facility was kept up. Instead, now we would be entertaining office buildings around the lake. And if we look at our people that live on the lake, these people have a vested interest in the lake. They have invested sizable sums to improve the lake. It's a great place for people to travel to, a great place for people to use and recreate. this group from the Lake Association and all the lake people that live out there, they're not a bunch of loud and obnoxious minority of delusional lake leasers, as Mr. Schutte wrote to all the aldermen about. That's simply a total disregard of the people that live in the city of Springfield, and these are residents of the city of Springfield. If you look at the number of events at the city of Springfield that the people of this city use, almost every weekend from the spring through the fall, there is some kind of walking, running, or community fundraising event, and they're out there using the lake, not because there's office buildings out there, it's because there's well-kept residential buildings, there's trees, there's good sites for people to use. That's why they're there. And I don't know if any of you have visited Fairview Lane. I don't live on Fairview Lane, but I visited Fairview Lane. That has a clear view of this property directly across the lake. And you would say, well, across the lake, that's a long way. Well, when you live at the lake, since there's nothing between you and who is across the lake, it's a very good view. And the view from the people at Fairview Lane is very clear of this. And no matter how Mr. Schutte or his council spin the view and use of this particular property, it's still going to be an office building. It's going to have glass, it's going to have stone, and it's going to have cars coming and going all day long. That isn't a regular use. What they've said, in essence, in their presentation is, well, we can go back and we could put a shooters up there, and they show some great big shooters on some kind of stilts. That would have to go through the city council. Obviously, we know what happened out there. Anybody that has lived as long as me, that's probably not a lot of you, but I remember going out there as a kid going to the KC's, and maybe some of the rest of you do. But the KC's was a club out there, and it had the footprint and was being used essentially as a type of a lake club. It later turned into a marina. So all of the uses that have been allowed out there were conducive to that marina and that use that the lake club, which was a KC club, was using. So in that particular instance, to threaten us that, yes, we can go out there and put in a tavern or other kind of facility that's going to operate to 1 a.m., they still have to get a liquor license. They have to prove their proper parties to have a liquor license, that they would conduct the property properly. And it further shows that if, in fact, they had been maintaining the property, perhaps they could run this as some type of a club out there. It was stated, I believe, by Mr. Sheehan that this would not be a precedent, which certainly would be a precedent where we would take property that's in a zoned residential area and convert it for office use. What if the office use, as grandiose as it has been presented, ends? What is the next office use that is going to come in there that the residents will have to put up with? We don't have any assurance of that. It wasn't mentioned in the analysis, but CWLP, I guess my 5 minutes, I'm closing soon. CWLT did a thorough analysis of this, and I would recommend that you read that. But basically, they made reference to the land use plan and its requirements. And basically, this area in a land use plan is a special protection wildlife preserve. And this runs all the way from the Boy Scout camp through the wildlife sanctuary. It's supposed to remain in a most natural state. It requires protection from future degradation to protect indigenous and migrating wildlife. It needs to be protected from development, pollution, and encroachment. In the land use plan, there is an area for office buildings. That's called the administrative area, and it's along Stevenson Drive, and it's a wooded area. We haven't heard any evidence that that has been investigated by this developer for location of this building. And I think, as Alderman Hanover said, we're not here objecting to the business that is being conducted or proposed to be conducted by Mr. Schutte. It's just at this site in a residential area, in an area that is supposed to be preserved for nature. I don't have a slideshow to show you, but I do have some photographs that you pass around. These were taken by Phil Wheat, a friend of mine, last summer. Excuse me, Phil Wheat, a friend of mine last summer. These are photographs of some of the birds and wildlife that live and prosper out in the wildlife sanctuary. Certainly they're not here to speak for themselves, but all of us as citizens of the city, all of us enjoy the very existence of these animals out here. Cars coming and going, whether it's 12 to 15, now as Mr. Schutte said at his first presentation on his first petition, it was going to be 30, then it was 20. But in his last presentation, he said when we have seminars, we may have more people in there coming back and forth. And I also ask you to look at the city itself, which through its own Office of Public Works said that this is improper zoning in that area. This woodland trail is not 20 feet wide. In the presentation made to the Plan Commission, Mr. Schutte said he understood that in 2019 the surface of Woodland Trail was going to be redone. I spoke to the department and directly to Mark Mahoney, and he said there's no plan to do that in 2018. There's no plan, there's no budget to do that in 2019. So I recognize Mr. Schutte is willing to say anything he can to answer any possible question here, but those facts simply don't exist. We have professional engineers that CWLP has hired that you've paid for. I think you need to listen to them. They look at the lake, they monitor the lake, they make sure what goes on the lake is proper. So I don't want to extend time further than that, but I think you should look at both the recommendation of CWLP, the Springfield Regional Plan Commission, all of which, and the City of Springfield, City of Springfield Public Services Department, all which said deny this. Why do we hire these people if we're not going to follow what they have to say? So I think you need to respect the citizens and their desire to maintain the residential quality and natural aesthetics of the lake area and to deny this petition as presented. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you very much. Okay. Next is Kim Curry.
I'll defer to the leader if that's
okay
with you, Mayor.
Then Philip Kirby.
I'm going to stand on what Mr. Scott has said.
He's pretty good. Joe Hardy.
I'm going to be the first one not to hear that 5-minute gong go, much to the, I'm sure, appreciation of all of you. My name is Joseph Hardy, and I live at 1310 Churchill Road. After appearing before you in the past and then cooperating with the owners and Mr. Schutte and cleaning up the property, one of the things I did was sought out some of the property owners out there. And I met with Ms. Curry, and I also met with Ms. Kapranica and members of the Springfield Lakeshore Improvement Association. One of the things that has bothered me from the beginning of this, and I shared this with the parties that were affected, is that I feel like the council members need to make a decision, an informed decision based on facts, rather than letting personal bias affect these decisions. From the documents that have been distributed and sent out to people, this is a copy, Springfield Lakeshore Association, and I had this discussion with them. There's this, and Mr. Scott just mentioned the land use plan that CWLP has for the property. And in the Lakeshore Improvement Association's letter, they quote a portion of the land use plan, but unfortunately their quote is inaccurate. Because when Mr. Scott was just up here and he talked about this property, and he said that it should go in an administrative area, I've got the land plan printed off CWLP's website, and in terms of administrative things, it says those lands used primarily in providing utility and city services. This includes land set aside for power and water plants, property management, lake service facilities, the Horse Creek pumping facility, substations, sites, etc. The next thing is called leased lands. And this has been a point of contention on this. Leased lands, it says those lands used for private residences, clubs, and camp facilities, agriculture, and commercial enterprises. The commercial activities are limited to motels, restaurants, service stations, etc., along Stevenson Drive, and the marinas, with an S on the end, at the south end of the North Lakeshore Basin, the old Route 66 area, and the Sugar Creek Arm. Also included in this category is a muni operate property. Yesterday, I had an opportunity to talk to Ted Meckes, because one of my questions is, I've stood before and I've heard that this is going to cause a proliferation. How can we take this property that clearly goes against the city's land use plan that was developed in 1991? It's been amended several times. And according to Mr. Meckes, this property is a part of that. It's recognized as commercial property. It's been recognized as commercial property now for in excess of 25 years. And I think that I've watched this process. I'm not familiar with how the zoning process works, but it's bothered me because I feel like since the beginning of some of these discussions, people have said that this doesn't meet CWLP's land use plan, and that's been accepted. And that CWLP plan belongs to this organization. I mean, it's what has been developed, and I think it's very clear that this isn't going to cause proliferation because they recognize that that is a commercial property in their plan that's been on file since 1991. It's been amended twice since then, and it's available for all of you to check. So that was the point. I hope that after considering the facts, you'll agree that this is an acceptable use. So thank you very much.
Is there any questions?
If anybody would like a copy of that plan, I have it here. I'd be happy to have it as a handout if anybody needs to refer to it. But I think that those that are familiar with it know that that is what the plan says, which is different than what has been distributed by people that are opposing this. Thank you.
Thank you. Alice Rainey?
I'm going to remove it.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if there's anybody else wish to address the council on this issue. What's that?
I deferred till later.
Oh, I thought you said you did good enough. Yes, sure, come on up. If you'd state your name and address for the council, we'd appreciate it.
My name is Phil Kirby, and I'd spoken here before. My wife Dee and I live at the lake, but more importantly, we'd first like to recognize that this lake belongs to everybody in this room. It belongs to the citizens here for recreation, for use as a lake, for our water source. I think what's really being said here, the gentleman that just spoke's a fine gentleman, but what I think he fails to recognize is that he represents a bank who has a very significant amount of money here at stake. Didn't hear that recognized. I also think it was a misstatement about what CWLP's recommendations as to this property are. When we talk about this property, we see experts from banks and we hear people talk that are engineers, talk about people that are engineers. The only engineers that have ever actually spoken here anything that's heard by this council are the engineers from City, Water, Light, and Power who stand against this. You don't hear any engineers speak on behalf of Mr. Schutte. You don't hear anyone from UIS speak on behalf of Mr. Schutte. No one from O'Shea Builders. No one from anyone he mentions. No one from BMW. It's an amazing company he speaks of. But what he doesn't speak of is its effect to our lake. What he's really saying here and what's being masked to this council is that if I can't have my business where I want it on a lake, then Springfield's not good enough for me. He just has a lot of ways to say it. I asked the city to consider the evidence that's before it, in particular the engineers from CWLP who are against this, the people you pay to represent you. This city's a wonderful city. It's a great city for business. It has a lot of opportunities. Those opportunities do not belong on the lake. What's really being asked here is to change the purpose of this lake as it's been since 1939. It's been for residents. It's been for lake-related purposes. And once you do what Mr. Schutte asked tonight, to make this variance, you start a process of trending or starting on the slope that allows that to happen over and over and over again. I ask that you protect this lake that belongs to our citizens, and I commend you for doing the right thing the last time you viewed this, and to stand by that, to stand with the Alderman Redpath, and to deny this request. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have someone by the name of John that signed up?
No, but Mayor, I'd like to talk.
Okay.
Go ahead.
State your name and address for the council. We'd appreciate it.
John Lescachet. I live at 35 Fairview Lane. I have 5 restaurants in the city of Springfield. I have a location at 1549 South Dirksen Parkway. It's always been a challenge, but we saved it. And it's been there since 1978, okay? We have a location on Wabash Avenue. We're opening a location on North Grand Avenue on 301 West, the old Red Coach Inn. We also have a location on 5th Street. So there's plenty of places to do business in Springfield other than on our lake. When I go home at night, I do get the privilege of living on the lake, and it's beautiful. And I consider that a privilege. I live at Fairview, so I do see this property, but that's not really the case here. The thing is, it's still the city and the leasehold. We're leaseholders. So we lease that land. And basically, it still belongs to the city of Springfield, belongs to the citizens of Springfield. And I feel like I'm a good caregiver to our property. I planted 22 trees on that property. I took a tree down one time. It was a dangerous tree, and I got a letter from the CWP telling me that I'm going to be convicted. I'm going to be taken off the property. They're going to take me off the property for taking this tree down. And Alderman Turner, I know she mentioned last time about, we have to have some teeth into these leases. This, to me, this guy, Mr. Weimer, did not take care of this property that we're privileged to take care of. He owned it for 10 plus years. And I'm not scared of owning a lease because I guess it's never been taken away in Springfield. But I think you'd have to do something pretty darn bad, I'm hoping, that would ever happen. We took a tree down. And at the same time, I'm not going to do on tears and everything, but I lost my mom. I got the letter the same day I lost my mother. And I got thrown in my face that the gentleman that's on CWP, his mom was sick at the same time. I never said a word. I'm just saying it now because it's been on my mind for a long time, and I promise you, Chuck, this will be the last time I ever talk about the damn oak tree that about smashed my house, okay? But what I'm saying is maybe it's time to think, I'm glad that you could come to Springfield and do all that stuff. I do business here. I do business in all places in Springfield. But it's just to me that land has not been taken care of. And it shouldn't, if you can take an individual resident and treat us like we were treated for a while. Now, I want to tell you, the new administration that's over at CWP, most of them have apologized to us because they said that was terribly how we were handled. And it was. I can't believe it. I planted 22 trees. You know how we fixed the tree issue? Does anybody know what we had? We get this letter saying we had to put this tree back after we cut it down. This tree was 60 foot tall. It was a dead oak tree, okay? Do you know, did it say what we were supposed to do? No, we had to go hire an attorney and pay $6,000 for an attorney to figure it out because we had to have somebody to help us. Because we were being told we were being evicted off our property, okay? So do you all know what happened? Because no one would talk to us. Nobody would come out and talk to us. I know that there's been people on this property But nobody came and talked to us. Nobody, not one person. We reached out to a lot of folks. Now, guess what? Does anybody know what we did? What was the cure for our deal? Does anybody know that? We had to plant 3 trees in Center Park. 3 trees in Center Park. Now, what the sad thing is about this, guys, is that I paid $6,000 in attorney fees. You know how many damn trees I could have given the city of Springfield for $6,000? A lot more than 3. But they just didn't talk to us, you know. So I think it's time to put some teeth into these leases again. And let's take our lake and make it a nice and a residential place like it's supposed to be. And that's from the heart, guys. I'm sorry. I just had to get that off my mind. And Chuck, that was the last time you ever hear about the tree again. I promise you. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Call a question?
Yep. All in favor of the...
Could we explain the vote, please?
Yep.
I think the motion on the floor is to deny, so a yes vote will deny the motion, deny the petition. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Thank you.
So motion to, or you vote yes, it's to approve the Springfield Sangamon County Regional Planning Commission recommendation, which is denial.
Correct.
So all those in favor to denial would vote yes. Those opposed vote no. Voting is now open. And the petition is denied, 10-0. That's the concludes our zoning portion of the meeting.
Thank you very much for your time. Thank you all.
At this point in time, the chair recognizes Treasurer Busher for the presentation of the financial report.
Thank you, Mayor Langfelder. The corporate fund in the month of April had a beginning balance of $3,488,543. We had total receipts in the month of April of $7,367,021. We had total disbursements of $8,341,672, which left the corporate fund with an ending balance of $2,513,892. That concludes my report, Mayor Langfelder.
Thank you. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the financial report.
So moved. Second.
Been moved and second. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Chair will entertain a motion to dispense the reading of the minutes of the May 1st, 2018 City Council meeting and approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and second. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Chair will entertain a motion to incorporate the pre-council reading, first reading of ordinances in the record of the City Council meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and second. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. The chair will entertain a motion to incorporate the pre-council reading of the consent agenda in the record of this City Council meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and second. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Chair will entertain a motion to place the consent agenda on final passage.
So moved. Second.
Been moved and second. Any discussion?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Mr. Clerk, please mark me on 226 as present.
Noted.
Any other discussion?
Mr. Mayor and Mr. Clerk, please move 2018-219 to the debate agenda. That is a ordinance to approve a new water contract with the Village of Rochester.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of the consent agenda vote yes. Those opposed, vote no. The voting is now open. And the consent agenda passes, 10 voting yes, none voting no, with the exception of 2018, 2019, 2018-219, moving to the debate agenda. Agenda number 2017-103, 2017-266, 2017-435, 2017-436, 2017-470, 2017-489, 2018-005, 2018-110, 2018-141 remain tabled or in committee. Next item on the agenda is 2018-215, an ordinance authorizing an agreement with the Energy Authority, Inc. for a 20-year integrated resource plan and an amount not to exceed $210,000 for the Office of Public Utilities. Chair will entertain a motion to place agenda number 2018-215 on final passage.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and second. And then, Doug, I'd ask you to come up or to give the presentation, or representatives from T.
Thank you. All right.
Yeah, we just wanted to basically have T here tonight. We have Jamie Maney and Lou Rosatone from TEA to basically kind of walk you through kind of what the process is and speak a little bit about, basically what they can do for us and the value that they provide. And then we can defer any questions, after they're done, and then, either Jamie can answer or I can answer depending upon what that might be. Jamie?
So my name is Jamie Maney, resident of Jacksonville, Florida, St. John's, Florida, and Vice President of Client Services for the Energy Authority. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you guys. I think you know that the Energy Authority is owned by public power utilities like CWLP, and so we appreciate the openness of this process and the opportunity to answer any questions that you have about the Integrated Resource Plan proposal that we've set forth. We have a two-slide presentation, really just to talk through the process that we go through when creating an IRP. And I think you have handouts as well. So typically, what our IRP process goes through, one, we want to sit down with the utility and our experts to identify the inputs and the objectives of the integrated resource plan. So we want to determine what does the future look like with regards to gas prices, power prices, and renewables and other resources that are available to a utility to build or buy in the region. We work through different scenarios. We don't have a crystal ball that says this is exactly what the future is going to be. So rather, we work through scenarios. In this case, we have up to 8 different scenarios that we can work through with the utility to say, well, if we think that the load of the utility is going to be here, we can have a scenario that says, well, maybe it's going to be higher than that through economic growth, or maybe it's going to be lower than that through better efficiency programs locally. And so we'll work through several scenarios that look into the future at different things that could happen. And then we develop the data around that, create market models. We use various software systems to create those market models. We have forward models of power prices, of gas prices. We have, again, external access to data with regards to costs of solar panels, of wind turbines, and other resources that are being developed regionally. We will screen those resources, again, bringing in that information, and then construct a portfolio that essentially looks at the different options to solve CWLP's resource plan for the next 20 years. And that will include current assets and the life of those assets, for how long will they be economic, and as well as what would one replace those assets with or build new assets to solve CWLP's resource needs over the next 20 years. And that could be from building assets, buying assets, retiring current assets. Really everything is on the table. And what we do is use a data-based approach where we drive those decisions based on economics and look at those different scenarios, and then work with the utility to select a portfolio and create an action plan for the next 20 years that will last for the utility. Certainly, it's an iterative process. It's a process that we work very closely with utility staff to hear their inputs as well as bring our knowledge and expertise to the table. I believe, and I think the folks at the utility here, as well as all of our other clients, will tell you that that we're going to tell you what the data tells us, and that's really our commitment, is that we bring forth the truth as we know it, or the best recommendations as we know them for the utility and for the city. And it's certainly in our interest that the utility remains strong and the city remains strong, as you're obviously a client of ours for a long time, and one that we want to remain clients with for a long time.
So is there any questions? Alderman Anner.
Thank you. I appreciate your coming up from Jacksonville.
Yes, sir.
We got you a little rain just to make you feel at home.
It was raining back home too, so.
I'm concerned. Number one, so when you buy and sell power for us, and you know, we got in a jam way back when that's what brought you in.
Yes, sir.
And I guess my concern is, I guess the first question is, when you guys sell power to a group, do you guys get commission on that or fees on that, or?
We do not.
You do not.
So we charge CWLP a fixed rate every month for our services. The scope of services includes selling or buying power to MISO or others, capacity payments as well. The transactions that we create, whether it's with MISO or with a counterparty or anyone else, the full value of that transaction, whether we're buying or selling on behalf of CWLP, goes back to CWLP. So we don't mark it up. It's completely transparent. And these guys see the confirmations of those transactions, and 100% of that value goes back to the utility.
So you don't have, and the reason why I ask this is because I'm concerned about a conflict of interest.
Yes, sir.
You guys are getting about $1.2 million a year, and my concern is, okay, you're going to do a document. What are you going to do it? And I'm concerned that we're going to get something that's going to benefit the city and not T.
Right.
Yep. And I think that's our duty as aldermen to look at that. So, when you sell it to another company, that company doesn't provide a fee to you to buy them?
No, sir. No. We completely stand in between. The way that we get paid is through those fixed fees, which are actually about half of what you stated a year. It's much less than $1.2 million a year. Okay. So those are the only fees that we collect to do any work on behalf of CWLP, with the exception of this new task order for the IRP, which obviously would be additional fees. But we make no commission. We're not a broker in the sense that we mark up the power. And certainly we have no conflict of interest with those counterparties that we're buying and selling with on CWLP's behalf. When we're in the market for CWLP, we are solely interested in the benefit of CWLP. Now, MISO obviously takes care of a lot of those sales, and we do represent other utilities in MISO, but we don't compete. Those portfolios don't compete with one another in any way that TEA can influence. We offer those into MISO, and they decide how much everyone gets paid and who gets paid that.
Well, and one of the other things I wanted to bring up, and there's been studies out that have showed that we're losing. There's been all kinds of different amounts of money on our generation side. Have you guys been aware of those studies? And I mean, I guess while I have you here, because we don't get to see you very often, what's your take on that? And I mean, have you guys done an actual look at what our generation cost is and things like that? Or have you just got it from CWLP?
Right. We are aware of the studies, generally aware of those studies. We do collect our data that we use, the cost data on all of the units comes from CWLP. There is no independent source, other source of that information. And I think those studies that others externally do, the majority of that data comes from CWLP through public filings and otherwise. So that's where we get our data for sure, is from the utility itself. The integrated resource plan is really an opportunity to look at those issues long term, and that's why we're doing this. I think this is part of the reason why the utility wants to do this, is to look at those issues long term and say, okay, what is truly the cost of those units? How long? What is the life of those units, and what does it cost to replace those? Because obviously nothing's free in this world, and so the replacement cost is another asset that we can bring into that study to help understand what that is relative to the cost of the units today.
And I guess that's just my concern that I mean, potentially you guys this study could be a situation where it's going to reduce the amount of money you're getting from CWLP, because we potentially may not be buying or selling as much on the market as what we are now. I mean, if we're shutting down units and we got native load, that's what we're gonna, we need it for us, not for the open market. So that's where I come up with the conflict. I'm concerned about it. Personally, I would have liked to have seen us go out, nothing against you guys, but to get someone that's more independent of CWLP, that can, another set of eyes that can overlook things and see what, kind of do this for us.
Right.
But I just wanted to tell you that, that's my thoughts, that's my concerns, and I probably will be a no vote on this, not against the IRP. It's just because I think we need an independent group to come in, and I still am concerned about a conflict of interest. So
yes, sir.
It's nothing against what you guys have done for us already.
Understood. Yeah, and may I address that comment with regards to our contract with CWLP is not volumetrically based. We are paid to do certain activities, and that includes portfolio management, modeling the portfolio, looking at different risks, making recommendations to CWLP in the short term and long term, managing whatever the generation resources are, whether CWLP owns them or owns them via contract, like your wind contracts. All of that management. Now, don't
bring those up.
There will be a portfolio of generation, whether they're in the city, whether they're external, whether they're PPAs or power purchase agreements, or whether they're city-owned assets. All of those assets will continue to exist, and the size of the utility really won't change. And so from that perspective, assuming that CWLP continues to be pleased with the work we're doing and continues to use us as their portfolio manager, the structure of the portfolio and having it change shouldn't really impact what TEA charges for our services, and because they are not based on $1 per megawatt hour or $1 per unit that you own or anything like that. They're really based on the amount of work that we do for CWLP, which I don't see going down anytime soon. So,
thanks.
Any other questions? Alderman Senor.
You mentioned you're from Jacksonville, Florida.
Yes, sir.
Are you familiar with Regency Square Mall?
I am.
I used to live right around the corner from there. Anyway, thank you for coming.
Yes, sir.
When you all finish this study, how can we turn this around? Because our bond rating's not so good. Is this something that we can use to help us build up our bond rating? Is it for the future outlook of the plan? Are there things going to be in here that we can address and make our power plant, our CWLP, a better place?
Good question.
Basically, when we're looking at trying to improve our bond rating, when we set out a plan for what we're going to do with our units, so if a decision is to retire, let's say a unit 31 or 32 in 3 years, and maybe it's 33 in 8 years. I'm just throwing these numbers out. When you set that process in place and you show what your plan is, and if there's savings that can be had and rate restructuring that can be done to maybe even improve costs to our citizens, that's going to help drive our bond rating and improve it.
Let me rephrase my question. Are you all going to come to specific conclusions that we can use in making decisions for the future?
Yes, yes. Yeah, we will absolutely have specific conclusions, recommendations, and an action plan for the utility. Now, it's going to be a working action plan, right? So some of those things, if you don't need resources for another 10 years, then some of those things are going to be layered in, and you're going to want to check back in on that to make sure the world hasn't changed over that time period. But I believe that rating agencies value that type of plan and for a utility to have that kind of roadmap.
And in those conclusions, you're going to give us steps to take to reach that end result? Or are we going to have to come up with our own steps to take?
We won't have a construction plan or an engineering plan. Those type of details certainly will not be part of that plan.
So we'll have to have another study to find out what those or are those going to be given to us, Doug?
Yeah, I mean, so what their options that they're looking at would be maybe there's a portion of renewables that they want to recommend, or maybe it's a natural gas plant as an option. So their cost analysis that they would show would be, basically kind of a per unit value to us to analyze and say, okay, that's the best path to have. If this council then decides that this path is that they want to go down, then we would want to then commission a study for a new gas plant.
I don't want to get something that's going to make us chase our tail. I don't want to go down that road. So if we're not going to have specific conclusions and a specific way to reach those conclusions, I don't want us to vote for something that's going to have us out there chasing our tail.
Well, no, I mean this is definitely going to bring some some information to everyone that we can rely on as a group to make those decisions on how we're going to go move forward as a city. And and don't think of this as a one and done thing either. Resource planning is really something that's continual. Just as Jamie kind of referenced, you're checking back every so often. It's not like necessarily you're updating it every year, but that's something that we've kind of stepped away from for quite a few years of resource planning. And then so that's why we're making some staffing changes as well as commissioning the IRP. And then moving forward, we're going to want to revisit this. Maybe it's every 3 years that we want to update the plan. Although going forward, it'll be easier because the information will be in place to be able to update it.
So with regards to the action plan, if you could speak to the implementation, you did Springfield, Missouri, right? And then yes, I imagine you came up with an action plan with recommendations.
We did.
And then after that, how they implement those action plans? I mean, did they have a committee or was it?
Yeah, then really the utility took that over to implement those action plans. So so if the recommendation, like in Springfield's case, or Missouri's case, was to retire one of their plants. We didn't do an engineering study of what it actually costs to shut down that plant and to brownfield that site and all of those things. That's the step that the utility would take. The analysis and the action plan was this unit is no longer economical after X date, and so that would be the time frame when you would want to remove it from your portfolio. And the most economic backfill for that would be wind or solar or a new natural gas plant or something else. And so so from that perspective, it's pretty specific timeline, type of resources based on market prices that we've received, and then the actual siting and engineering, all of that would be latter steps.
So let me ask a question. Mm-hmm. If you come to the conclusion that one of these units should be shut down, shouldn't we in the interim be working on a contingency plan that if that is a conclusion, then this is the steps that we're going to take to reach that and to deal with that if you come to that conclusion?
A transition plan.
Right. Yeah, I'll let you do.
So, with that with the recommendation, we don't really know for sure what recommendation might be, whether that's, it's 2 years, is it 5 years? So trying to develop a plan in place with not really knowing exactly what the outcome is going to be and how we're going to replace that generation is much harder to try to figure out a transition piece. And we don't want to really try to slow that process down of getting this information to us, because this is key on building those decisions as we move forward.
Right, but we know already the age of those units right there, and we know the condition of them right now. So why aren't we working on everything simultaneously instead of waiting until we get an answer from someone and then starting our plan from there, because it'll just extend it out longer and it'll cost us more. And I don't think we have an infinite amount of resources to deal with these things.
Well, I guess as far as planning, trying to transition the workforce, we've been trying to kind of hold off on that until we get a little bit firmer knowledge. Now I'm trying to move forward now concurrently. There's been some discussions at the, with the plant level of the staff, trying to figure out which areas to look at and start identifying, positions and stuff that are affected. So there's been some work that's been going on, but it's been, kind of a smaller, low-key level, trying to prepare for this next phase.
Thank you very much.
Alderman Redpath.
Thank you for coming, by the way. I wish I was in Jacksonville, Florida. But I'm the chairman of the Utility Committee. Alderman Turner and I met with some of the representatives from the Sierra Club, and we were trying to get some interaction at our next meeting on the IRP. And so, will there be any information out that people can look at soon, or is that what's the earliest we're going to have some information?
Next meeting is June 11th, I would doubt.
June 11th? Yeah, I would doubt that it's that soon.
You can't get it that fast?
No, sir. It is a long process. It's a detailed process, and really the amount of information that we have to collect, and then the computer simulations that we run and those type of things. I mean, it really just takes a long time to do that, and there's certainly iterations in there. I would presume that the utility would be working with you guys through different preferences, scenarios, things that you'd like to see for us to consider. But in terms of output, that'll be months away.
So
can I just follow?
Yes.
But we would like to actually maybe discuss the IRP process a little bit further in detail, maybe discuss some scenarios in general at the committee meeting.
That's what the folks would like to have a little interaction, and we were going to, Alderman Turner and I talked with them today and trying to figure out, formulate some questions that we can bring to you, so maybe we can talk about that at the next utilities meeting.
And if you could speak to the public process for the integrated resource plan when you're going through it.
Yeah, and go ahead.
Well, the as far as T goes, they're basically, running the scenarios that we're going to, be presenting to them. So their look at that is to consider renewables, to consider new generation, to consider basically upgrading our transmission system and importing more power. So we're trying to cover all, and demand response as well. So they're trying to cover all the gamut of options that we need to consider. The viewpoint is try to take in, any kind of input we can along the way, in that process. But then also, when it comes down to it at the end, it's going to be about, for your decisions, it's going to be about really dollars, I think. That's where it's going to be the primary driver. And then the secondary driver is environmental stewardship. So they're all key components to this, but it's hard to make decisions on one aspect if you don't have it on another, and you really need to know the costs of all your options before you can really dive deep into some good discussion on which direction to take the city.
Yeah, Jamie, if you could speak to either Springfield, Missouri's integrated resource plan or any other, what type of public engagement did you have through that process and through the implementation phase or the action plan? Because I know that's a concern from the general public. They'd like to provide that feedback.
Yep. So what we've done is we've worked with the utility to develop the scenarios. And those scenarios really are external things that would happen that would change sort of our assumptions. So I can look out and say, I think gas prices are going to do this based on what I know. You guys may say, well, I want you to run a scenario that says, 10% of the homes in Springfield are going to install rooftop solar. And what is that going to do to this integrated resource plan if 10% of the citizens are generating their own electricity during the summer? So that's a scenario that I can't predict, but it's one that may be important to the city. And that was important to one city that we did this for in Florida. It was extremely important. And then when we did this in Missouri, they said, that's not as important. But there's another scenario that's very important to me. I think that the Clean Power Plan, which has been stayed by the Trump administration, that maybe it will come back in some form, and that carbon will have a price on it. And so I wanted you to run a scenario that looks at carbon price, at X, Y, or Z. And so that was one of the scenarios that was important to them, so we could look at that. And then when we run all of the different solutions to those scenarios, sometimes some of those solutions solve 80% of every scenario, and so you kind of covered all your bases. And so those scenarios really are developed from our perspective with the utility, but from the utility's perspective, I think, the utility committee, so that we understand you guys, but we can't serve every master. We kind of have to serve the utility and have them, run that. Then once we have preliminary results and then final results, those would be shared with this body. And in Missouri, that's exactly what we did. Was we presented to their board. It's not the council; they have an independent board, but we presented to the board of the utility all of our results and had Q&A at that point as well.
Yes, just to follow up with that. So just to circle back to the committee meeting. When we talk about the IRP at the next meeting, is to kind of discuss some of those scenarios that we're proposing. So I think there's there's 8 right now, but we also are asking for some additional money for unforeseen. So if there's an additional scenario that we need to look at, we can add that to the study.
Alderman McMinima.
Mr. Manny, thank you for being here today. And we understand that the Energy Authority does no other work than provide services to municipally owned utilities. Is that correct?
The vast majority of what we do is for municipal utilities. We do have a couple of clients who are not municipal utilities. For instance, we have a client that we work for that's a wind farm. It's a private private entity, but the output of that wind farm goes to municipal utilities, and therefore we, as an ancillary service, for the benefit of the municipal utilities, we work for them. But we have a Section 115 IRS ruling, which essentially makes us tax exempt. We're an instrumentality of our owners, just as I think CWLP is an instrumentality of the city of Springfield. And so we're an instrumentality of our owners, and therefore we are restricted primarily for working only with public power, state-owned or municipal-owned entities.
Well, your participation with all those municipally owned utilities is extraordinarily valuable when you come here to Springfield, because you've got the knowledge of both the municipal challenges, but you also know the industry.
Right.
And your work is going to be extraordinarily important to our city. As you know, the history of our more recent generation history. We just about doubled our generation capacity about 10 years ago, and for the first time we decided we'd try to sell out into the market. Up until then, for 90 years, we had just created enough generation capacity for our native load.
Right.
So that was a very major change in strategy. And then the Great Recession hit, and the price of electricity tumbled.
Right.
And as a city, we never sold on to the market like we thought we would. Our sales onto the market about a half, maybe a third of what we thought they would be. Right. So ever since then, around this circle at various times and in the newspapers, it's been covered in the mass media, we've thought about, well, we've got these older units and we've got excess capacity. When do we retire the older units? And thus, here's the Energy Authority. You can give us good advice on that. And the integrity of your work is extraordinarily important. As other aldermen have kind of mentioned, we really need solid outside advice that we can rely upon. And so we are looking forward to that advice. Alderman Hanauer referred to some of the other reports that have been very well discussed at various times in our media, in the State Journal Register, in the Illinois Times, in radio and TV. And I just want to list some of those reports. We've had 5 significant reports in the last 5 years. There was a December 2013 environmental compliance study conducted by Burns and McDonnell. And I've got a list of these. I'd like to give these to you later on at the end of the meeting. There was a January 2015 Dahlman Units 31 and 32 study conducted by Synapse Energy. There was a September 2017 Dahlman operating cost analysis conducted by Synapse Energy. There was an April 2018 study conducted by Burns and McDonnell. that evaluated compliance options and costs for EPA's coal ash and water discharge rules. That's the most recent study. And then there was an April 2018 study conducted by, it was almost like a national study conducted by Moody's Investor Services on efficiency and competitiveness of coal plants compared to natural gas and wind. We hope you will take possession of these studies. We hope that in your reports and in your recommendations, you make reference to these studies to the extent possible. I think when there's that public participation that takes place that Mayor Langfeld has referred to, we've got some very knowledgeable members of our public that are familiar with these studies, and they'll be in a position to evaluate your work in part by what they know of the previous studies. So I just wanted to give you a heads up on that, and thank you for being here, and we look forward to the knowledge and the guidance that you can provide to our utility managers, to the ratepayers, to the residents, and to the City Council and the administration. Thank you
very much. Alderman Donald, then Hanover.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, thank you for coming. We're glad to have you here today. Just a couple of really quick questions. You know, my understanding is the integrated resource plan is basically one of the objectives is to, as Alderman Minimum just outlined, what is to outline for us when and what we do with some of our older units. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And but I wanted to focus on not to backtrack too much, but on the present services you provide for us. Mm-hmm. You mentioned that you're basically the broker. You work with CWLP and MISO on determining when we sell power to the grid and when we purchase power from the grid. And as a part of that, you need to know what power is, you know, what we're going to be purchasing power for and how much power costs and have a general, actually a very detailed understanding of the market as a whole, right?
Right.
But in order to do that, don't you need to know what the cost it is to generate a unit of power by unit here in Springfield, as opposed to what it costs to purchase it from the market?
Yes, in the short term, that's right. And but different people have different ways of costing units in the short term, right? So if I have all of this fixed cost that I have to pay for anyway, to the next hour I'm willing to sell it for anything above my incremental costs, so my fuel and incremental labor and wear and tear on the unit, those type of things. So that's an incremental cost on the unit. So I'm willing to pay, you know, if that's $13, I'm willing to take $14 to run that unit. But an integrated resource plan will look not only at that, but the full fixed cost and debt service on the unit and the rest to say, well, truly in a long term, if I can, you know, build a new unit or buy a contract or do whatever with regards to my resource plan, that would be more economical than that full cost of that unit. That's a different decision, a different type of time frame and study. And so yes, if you know, our current work is CWLP has these assets, we're going to do everything we can to get as much value out of those assets the next hour, the next month, the next year as we possibly can. That's a different question than whether or not CWLP should have these assets. And that's what an integrated resource plan looks
No,
at.
I understand that, and I appreciate the way you put it, but what I'd like to do, and I'm probably not going to be able to flesh that out here at this meeting, but as far as the services you provide and the costs that are involved in making those decisions when we purchase power or when we sell power to the grid, I'd like to have a better understanding and actually a real simplified, clear understanding of the cost involved and what it costs to generate a unit of power. Why do we make this decision to? And I know there's many other factors. There's weather. You know, units are down. There's many factors that play into all of this. But on an average day, I'd like to have a better understanding of that. If you could, and Director, I'd appreciate that.
Well, yeah. So I think I kind of barely mentioned this last week. So the incremental cost versus like what we've always done historically. Versus the cost per unit of actual, you know, fixed, variable, everything included in the whole cost per unit. That's something we've been working on for a long time. And, you know, unfortunately, the accounting system is not something that is designed for that. And, you know, there's I think there's over 200,000 line items in a spreadsheet for, you know, one fiscal year that we're looking at. So they're developing that right now. We're going to have at least 3 fiscal years to look at that we're going to be able to give TE, and they're going to be able to use that data to show the true cost of the unit, you know, per unit to generate power. And then we can share that with you as well and walk you through that.
And I appreciate that, but I'm just going to say it. how do you determine that it's in the best interest of the city of Springfield to purchase power if you don't even know the cost it is to generate a unit of power? I don't understand how you can do that.
No, that's the whole purpose of this IRP, is that we're going to show them what these costs are, per unit, so they can use that data to show what direction we need to go in.
I get the purpose of the integrated resource plan, but I'm talking about on a daily basis presently. Those decisions are important decisions, and Alderman Hanauer has beat this, and it's kind of gotten in my crawl, and I'm just taking this opportunity to ask: how do we not know what it costs to generate? How do we know it's in the best interest not to just purchase from the grid rather than to generate power on a daily basis?
That's where the incremental cost comes from, Alderman, and that's what we look at. We sit there and say we know what it costs us to generate that next megawatt of energy. All right?
Okay.
And if we can buy it cheaper than we can generate that next megawatt of energy, we buy it. If we can produce it cheaper than we can buy it for that next megawatt, then we generate that megawatt of energy. That's how we do that on a daily basis. That's what we're looking at. The whole structure of what the all-in cost of generation, when to pay for our transmission, distribution systems, transformers, that's all based off your base rate, our rate class for the citizens of Springfield, our consumers and everyone. That's where that comes from. When we talk about buying on energy on the market versus producing it, we're looking at the incremental cost. And that's basically your coal cost and your manpower cost. We know what those are. We've said that, that's what we talked about last week. We fully understand that. That's what we give the Energy Authority to help us make those decisions, that incremental cost. That's how you determine that.
All right, now we're getting somewhere. I'd just like to have a better, I think everyone in this room would probably like to have a better understanding of those costs that are involved there and when those decisions are made. And if you could work with us on that, we'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Alderman Hanauer.
Real quick, a couple things that I just thought about. Part of the scenarios that need to definitely be addressed. Number one, I mentioned it last week. We really need to look at our staffing, how our staffing's done on the units, because we don't have staff dedicated to a unit. That could really affect the cost of production for that particular unit if they can float back and forth. And I don't know how other power plants do it or whatever, but that's something that I think that needs to be added to the scenario. The other thing I think that is very important is, okay, let's say we shut down 31, 32, and 33. Are we going to look at how's that going to deal with our coal contract? Will the mine up north, will they be able to stay open with the amount of the quite a bit of less coal that we're buying? Will they be able to stay open? And if not, what's our price of coal going to be? And is that going to, I guess, is that going to offshoot, what our ratepayers are going to pay because we're not buying as much coal and that, how's that going to affect it? That's a big, that's something that's big that we need to think about, because then we're down to one in the area. If they shut down, we're down to one company and they can set the price, and there's not a dang thing we can do about it.
You want to talk about the coal contract?
Then I've got one other issue I do want to bring up. I know we're going to talk about renewables, and I don't want anybody to think that I'm against renewables. I'll be for renewables all day long as they are at the market price and we're not paying an exorbitant amount. My big concern about this is right now renewables are subsidized. Am I correct? All right. What happens if the subsidies go away?
In our assumptions, and we did this with Springfield, Missouri, in our assumptions, we only have subsidies in there for as long as we know the law to last. Right. So when they expire, you actually see the price of those renewables change to the true price, right, without subsidies. The good news for the renewable sector is that those prices are coming way down, right, even without subsidies. But it does, we certainly look at that. We don't assume that there will be a subsidy beyond the existing production tax credit or investment tax credit.
But I just wanted to bring up those three, especially the coal scenario. If the coal plant, if the coal mine gets shut down, we are going to be paying $60 $65 a ton coal, guaranteed, because Forsyth can set the price. And we have nowhere else to go for it.
We ought to be careful here. We talking about the contracts. And Corporation Counsel, if you interject, please.
I think that the current coal contract is a binding legal arrangement with Arch. In turn, within the next year and a half, it'll come up for renewal. Perhaps the information from the RP might be of some benefit. There are some alternates of potentially like a Western coal and so on, but that may have capital costs associated with it. So I think that it's hard to really speculate where we're going to actually end up until we see what the recommendations or the structure might look like.
Jim, my only point is this is going to be a 20-year plan, and we have got to look at that. That will be a big portion. Mm-hmm. So
yes.
Alderman Tyler.
I started serving on this council in 2007. Alderman Redpath served before that, and probably heard a lot of the same things from previous administrations where projections were that with Dolman 4 going online, that Dolman 31 and 32 sometime in the 2020s would outlive their usefulness. And that's still reasonable. The one other part to that they kept bringing up is that there would be a major cost associated with the shutdown of one or both of them for the cleanup, site preparation, everything else. One of the things that I'd like to make sure is in this, when we're talking about ratepayers and keeping our rates where they are, if Dolman 31 and 32 are producing to a point where they're making $500,000 to $1 million of profit a year, that's still better on our ratepayers than it is for us to absorb a $5 to $7 million hit for a cleanup of the site when there's no revenue coming in. And if there's a point that you believe that the shutdown is imminent, we need to have part of the plan being how do we save up for the shutdown, because we can't absorb a $5, a $7, a $10 million hit in 1 year. Our rates will go through the roof for that time period on our ratepayers, and you want to see what's going to happen to that. Everybody's going to be upset. It's not going to be the conservationists. It's not going to be the constituents. It's not going to be the elected officials. It's going to be everyone, because we will have a major cost that comes with no relief. And I don't see anybody coming in with their checkbook to try to write a check to shut that down for us. So if you predict that 2027 is the shutdown date for 3132, then we need a plan to get to 2027 where we squirrel away the money to do the shutdown.
Speak to how Springfield, Missouri did it?
Can I just kind of address that just a little bit first? Sure. I'll let you step in, Jamie. So shutdown costs, I guess I kind of look at it a little bit differently, maybe the way it was discussed in the past, is that we're going to have to shut them down eventually. So it's kind of a sunk cost, and we're going to have to incur. I don't remember the exact, estimates, what I had heard back, several years ago, but let's just say it's $1 million for shutting down the units. That's something that we would have to plan for, when that decision is made. But it could be that, I'm just throwing numbers out, that, through capital investments that have to be made for turbine overhauls, for generator bank boiler tube replacements, for dry ash handling, dry ash conversion, those capital investments could far outweigh the costs to decommission the units. So that's something that we would need to consider, moving forward. But those capital costs will definitely be considered in the plan for the IRP. But the decommissioning cost, I just don't really see that, because it's a sunk cost that really having a material effect on the outcome of the IRP, not necessarily our final plan or decisions that we make to carry out the IRP recommendations. Does that make sense?
It does, but I just want you to, I hope that you're hearing my point, that if we do have a date, that we need to be planning for those sunk costs so that it's not a sudden expenditure that's being passed on in our rates.
I agree.
How did Springfield, Missouri do it? Then Alderman Turner.
And I'm not sure. I would have to go back and look how we did that in particular. I will, I'll make sure that we address it, not necessarily, the budgeting, the capital budget to save up for that would definitely be a utility issue once we've created the integrated resource plan. But we will address that issue, even if it's just a flag in there that says, listen, don't forget this, and this is the estimated cost. So,
And
so
like
we'll
I
address
said,
that to the extent
as
we can.
part of your solution to Springfield, Missouri, did you provide to them what the cost was going to be for the shutdown in that model?
I don't know. I don't have it in front of me.
But
I can find out how we
I don't mean to put you on the spot. I'm
Right.
just saying that when we're doing this, I'd like to make sure that we're being thorough and we understand that there are costs involved. It's not just flipping a switch and walking away.
Right. Yep. Understood.
Alderman Turner?
Just to kind of reiterate or piggyback on Alderman Thailand and Alderman Hanauer, I understand, and I think everybody understands that this is not the end-all be-all, and you're not going to come back with, this is what it is, these are the recommendations, this is what I think you should do. It's more a roadmap that gives us an opportunity to then use your product to decide how we move forward. But having said that, I think that the budgeting piece and the staffing piece are two of probably the most important issues that we're going to have to face moving forward. So as we're looking at working through this plan that you're going to produce, I think that we definitely need to keep those two things in mind, knowing that you're not going to come back and tell us this is what you should do about it, but just keeping it in mind with regard to the scenarios that the scenarios and the research that you use and the methodology that you're using. Keep in mind that the budgeting piece and the staffing is extremely, extremely important. And I think with regard to Director Brown, I think that those are two things that we can start doing some preliminary work around. Because even though, we don't know exactly what time frame, the exact time frame that we're working on, if we're talking about shutting down some pieces, we do know that eventually that's going to happen. So I think that we can start working on that budgeting and that staffing, long range, but just keep that in mind and look at it now. Because I don't want us to be in a situation, and I can see it, is if we come up, and it's like, okay, we have X number of dollars of work that needs to be done. It's not economically feasible to do this work. We might as well just go ahead and start that shutdown process, but we have not made any budgetary plans to do that. And then we're just in a bad situation. And as badly as everybody, different interest groups are saying we need to do this, Alderman Thailand's right. We don't have the money to do it, and we don't know where that money is going to come from. So we really do need to start thinking about that right now. And a shutdown or any other planning that would have to happen that would create a change in staffing we need to start looking at that now, because we don't want to have a situation where we just wake up one day and say, okay, we need a 20% reduction in staffing, and then, boom, that's it. We need to prepare not only the plant, but we also need to prepare, our staff for that. So I just want you guys to keep that in mind as you're moving forward.
Yes, yeah, and we will. We'll definitely be starting to address, how we're going to try to carry out staffing changes at the power plants as we move forward. It will be a separate process from the IRP, because that's not really T's expertise. But we'll definitely be considering that as part of the power plant staff and management, definitely.
Any other questions? All those in favor of the ordinance, vote yes. Those opposed, vote no. The voting is now open. The ordinance passes 9 voting yes, 1 voting no. Next item on the agenda is agenda number 2018-219, an ordinance authorizing amendment number 1 to the water service contract with the Village of Rochester, Illinois for the Office of Public Utilities. Chair will entertain a motion.
So move.
Second.
Been moved and second. Discussion?
Discussion, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Alderman McMenamin.
Mr. Mayor, I reviewed this ordinance from the point of view of someone that hopes we don't have to build the second lake for the reason that it's a very expensive proposition, and so we can't afford it with all our other obligations down the road. And number 2, because hopefully we can get along without a second lake. So that's how I analyzed this contract with Rochester. So from that point of view, I kind of viewed it as a blessing in disguise that Rochester might want to leave the city of Springfield, because that de-obligates our responsibility to provide them with water for not just for the next, would have been 11 years, but for the next, I think we've extended the contract by 5 years, so for the next 16 years. And we're doing so at with less revenue. In other words, we've agreed to give them, I think it's 28% reduction in their rates. And so we're obligating for a further period of time, and we're going to take in less money from Rochester. And I think if you project it out, it's somewhere between over $3 million we're going to give up. We just talked about the utilities and the power plants. If we do retire units 1, 2, and 3, they use roughly 8 million gallons of water per day, and that's about 20% of our water usage. So not only in Springfield have we had retail usage flat to declining, but our industrial usage has been declining and will radically decline if we retire units 1, 2, and 3. So I'm concerned about the way we went about this with Rochester. If they wanted to find another source of water, it could have been a blessing in disguise, and so that's the reason for my no vote. And that's besides the fact I think you should have come to the City Council with your offer to Rochester before you made the offer to Rochester. And so that's another point of contention.
Yeah, I'd ask Ted to come up, and while he comes up with that, remember the request for the secondary water source is to provide, just Springfield doesn't have a alternative water source, but we are the backup for other communities. And one thing where the utility fell down on was with Chatham. Yesterday, we supplied water to Chatham. So those needs aren't going to go away. We're looking at economic development. The economic driver for the future is going to be having a quality, abundant water supply. And those are going to be the communities that grow and thrive, just not on a regional basis. So really the study, I know everybody's, myself included, set on Hunter Lake. But we have to go through that whole process. But the intent of that whole process was to have a secondary source of water, which we're trying to have that backup plan for, which is now probably a 40-year drought instead of a 100-year drought since we've been at it 60 years. But if you'd talk about the portion with Rochester and the recommendation that
Rochester uses about 250,000 gallons a day, which is a drop in a bucket of what we actually need. To lose them would have been about a 2.5%, a little over 2% rate increase for our customers. The possibility of Hunter Lake ever happening, well, we've been trying for a long time, and I'd hate to have to raise rates to all of our customers because we lost another customer. We lost Chatham, and we suffer the consequences of that to the tune of a couple $1 million a year. We need that revenue. Water's a high fixed cost business. What I mean by that is I make 20 million gallons a day. I cover my debt service, my labor, all my costs, and I make that next 25 million gallons a day. That 5 million costs me a little bit of chemical and a little bit of electricity. So that's where we make our money to reinvest in our system. Our water utilities, it's not getting cheaper to make water. It's getting more expensive. There's a lot of issues out there. The more people to absorb that cost, the better off we all are.
Alderman Tyler?
And that was the point which I was going to make.
over the years, we have seen that we do have some of the best water rates in the area, if not the Midwest. We have seen studies and tests that we have some of the best tasting water.
Thank you.
We have routinely showed that our water department handles things well. I understand the concerns of the alderman about the sunk costs of the possible Lake 2, but I agree with the mayor. We can't control what the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers does. They haven't made a decision in 57 years, and I don't think they're going to get off their butts tomorrow. I'll just be honest. They're not going to. They're delaying the decision for whatever reason. And it's not something that we can immediately address. What we can address is doing the best that we can for our current constituents that we have. That 2% decrease in the water, that helps the people who are on fixed income who have to have the water at their house. 2% over the course of a year might save that person $50, $100. Whereas the flip side of that, if we were turning around like when we lost Chatham or if we lost Rochester, if we lost multiple things, all the different things, the technologies that are coming out with the high efficiency washing machines and other things, some of these car washes are going high efficiency. It's going to decrease the water drawdown. It's going to decrease the usage, at which point our constituents' rates could go up.
Correct.
The bottom line is that we're here to protect the integrity of the utility and to keep the rates as low as possible for our constituents. When you're negotiating things with outside clients, that's not our constituents. That's your job as the water department manager to do the best you can with the utility to make those sales.
Any other discussion? Alderman Redpath.
Are we subsidizing New Berlin too? Did I hit?
Partially. They took some water from Kern Gardner at first, and now they're...
And how long is it Chatham? How long we have to give them water?
Depends how quick they get their ground storage tank back in service. Probably end of next week is what they assume. We started yesterday.
So they're probably having a little water tea party out there, aren't they, so they can drink the water?
You know, it's feeding most of they're still pumping from their plant.
Yeah.
So it's usually west of Route 4.
Because, you know, we get requests, I know I do from my constituents who butt up to Chatham, and I'm sure the other aldermen that butt up to there, that they'd die to come back here to be on City Water, Light and Power's water supply.
Alderman McMenamin?
Well, again, I just want to emphasize that, you know, on the one hand, we're saying we want to save, what is it, $500,000 of revenue from Rochester, but I'm trying to say let's avoid the capital expense of $150 million lake, or with financing, it gets over that, and the rate increases that will come with that second lake. So, you know, you can talk about avoiding the loss of revenue from Rochester, but we've also got to think about the impact of a second lake on our ratepayers, and it's going to be a third or a half or a 30-40% rate increase. Who knows? We haven't seen those numbers yet, but it'll be major.
Alderman Hanauer.
Ted, on the secondary water source, right now, what's the cheapest route to go of all the sources that we've looked at? Is it Lake? Hunter Lake.
Correct.
Okay. I saw a thing on TV not too long ago about the droughts out west when they were having the droughts, and how literally it was like the Old West where people were stealing water from other people. Towns were stealing water from other towns, and it was. You know, like the mayor said, they've said all along, the towns in the future that have water, and plenty of it, will be the towns that people draw to, because it's going to be the groundwater. 60 Minutes had a thing out that the groundwater, and it showed the groundwater here in Illinois too, that it is diminishing. It's getting it's not refilling. So. I think that regardless, we're going to have a secondary water source. We have to. We'll never see light or medium industry here in this town unless we have it, because they're not going to bring a factory in that potentially could shut down if we don't, you know, in this situation of a drought. So those shows are out there. It might be something to go look at. But I think it's good that Rochester did what they did, and I think that it was good for us, and I applaud everybody that was involved in it. So thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yep, Alderman McMinnim.
We really do have a secondary source of water. What we're really talking about is a tertiary source of water. Our original source of water was Sugar Creek, and then we added to that with the South Fork of the Sangamon River, and we pump from the South Fork, and that has a watershed of about 3 or 4 times the watershed of Sugar Creek. And there's folks out there in the public that have talked about other ways to supplement even those 2 sources of water besides a second lake. And let's not overstate our glory with our Lake Springfield. I mean, the Great Lakes, that's the greatest source of fresh water in the whole world. And if you compare our water to the Great Lakes, the Great Lakes is about 1,000,000 to 1. I think that's what the number is. That's the ratio. Or you look at Lake of the Ozarks. They've got 1,000 times the amount of water that we have at Lake Springfield. And we got water all around Lake Illinois. So let's not pump our chests and think that if we have a little more water in Springfield, somehow everyone will converge on Springfield and we'll have double our population. I think it's a false concept to bank our future on a second lake. I think we got so many other assets we can capitalize besides the second lake that are less expensive than that cost. So I just want to throw that perspective in.
Any other discussion? Very good. Everybody all in favor of the agenda number? Vote yes. Those opposed, vote no. The voting is now open. And it passes, 9 voting yes, 1 voting no. Next item on the agenda is number 2018-227, an ordinance authorizing a supplemental appropriation of fiscal year 18 funds in the amount of $25,727 and authorizing payment to Hanson Professional Services for the minority participation plan for the Office of Budget and Management. The chair will entertain a motion to place agenda number 2018-227 on final passage.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and second. Any discussion? Yep, Alderman Turner.
Again, I think this is a great program, and I also want to acknowledge Director Brown. I gave him kind of a hard time last week, but, he just really didn't talk to his staff, and he went back and checked, and they are hiring 4 interns, and 3 of them are minorities. So, yay, Doug Brown.
Don't give him a big head. Don't give him a big head.
He's having a good week.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of the ordinance, vote yes. Those opposed, vote no. The voting is now open. The ordinance passes 10 voting yes, none voting no. Next item on the agenda is number 2018-230, an ordinance authorizing a transfer of funds in the amount of $100,000 from personal services into awards and grants for the Springfield Convention and Visitors Bureau for emergency passage. Chair will entertain a motion to place agenda number 2018-230 on final or emergency passage.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and second. Discussion. Since I probably caused this ordinance, I think I'll speak to it. And really, I have Janet Kirby here. I asked her to come tonight, and I did call each of the aldermen, which I appreciate you expressing your, concerns or what have you, and support for Janet somewhere. And really, the reason we're at this point, just to recap, Scott Dahl, which everybody was excited about, accepted the position, and 2 days later decided not to take it. And so in those conversations, there were, varying reasons, but the one was residency was brought up, and his concern was, his daughter goes to Williamsville and changing mid-year with regards to that, and I told him that's something we could work through. And so actually I increased the rate at that point, $105,000 to $110,000. The other one was, with the election 11 months away, he said, I think you're going to win, but that's a concern, always is a concern. I said, well, I understand that. And so that was another one, plus, whatever else. And so 2 days later, those were some of the things he threw out. So the reason I acted on Janet Kirby is because we're coming into the height of the tourism and convention season with the summer months. I looked at, well, who could I bring in that would be able to provide that leadership with regards to that department. We've all seen her actions with the strategic ward plan meetings, and really the key component that we need to do with the Convention Visitors Bureau is, one, work internally, just like we do with all our departments. How can we raise the level of activity within the department? How can we raise that bar higher? I think she has that quality because of her abilities with management and leadership development. And then the other aspect is who could bring in or who could coordinate the activities outside the department. You know, the economic development report for Sangamon County, they listed the Convention Visitors Bureau as one of the silos. So that's one of the reasons I said Janet Kirby could do that. You know, she can bring in and all the resource partners that we have, the Hotel Lodging Association. She can bring in the SMEA, you know, the Convention Center, you know, Sports Commission, and we're putting together the advisory board for the Convention Visitors Bureau to do a number of things, and that ordinance will be heard by this council next month. But that's one of the reasons I thought she would be able to come in, short notice, and be able to bring people together, because that's the intangible that people seem to forget. You know, we get caught up in tourism and conventions, which we should, but we need to broaden that base. You know, we need to raise that bar higher. And one of the areas is conventions. I know I talked to the hotel groups. They said conventions are bread and butter. You know, tourism is good, but conventions is really what the bread and butter is. And Janet brings that expertise. She has, you know, familiarity with the medical community, and that's one area that we haven't tapped into. That's one of the designations we gave HIP to take a look at what's it take to bring in those medical conventions to Springfield. Because, you know, I think you've heard it before. We have a great medical district, great medical community. A lot of people don't realize Memorial Health Services received the McKesson Award. The McKesson Award is given to one hospital in the United States, and it's right here in Springfield. And that's because of their quality care and service that they provide. We should be promoting that, but we haven't. And so that's one of the aspects she could bring to the table. And not only are they #1 in the country, I believe they went second in the world. And so that's something that, you know, other countries are coming here to visit our Learning and Innovative Center, things of that nature. So, you know, that's the reason you know, the main two reasons, but there's others you know, that I've, you know, decided on her as opposed to, you know, putting it out national search, not going to happen, not within, you know, 11 months you have an election and all that. So that's one of the reasons. The reason I appointed her as an acting director is because of that reason. So, you know, we can move forward as expeditiously as possible and go from there, and she'd be judged on her actions. But the other person that I'm going to point out is sitting right back in the back, Mark Mahoney. He was an alderman at one time and didn't know a lot about public works, but he's excelled. He's one of our favorite directors because he understands the intangible of service. And it was brought up by the utility. I think people mentioned about service that was going on. The gentleman that had his tree had to remove his trees. That's all service. It's common sense. So Mark Mahoney understands that. Janet Kirby understands that. And that's one of the reasons. So Michael Ellis, he's waving. He understands it. But that's one of the reasons I, you know, appointed her. But I understand concerns, and that's, you know, one of those areas that I thought she'd be good at this point in time to move forward in that direction. Alderman Tyler?
A few points. I guess my first point would be is that with the acting, one of the first ordinances that we brought as a body to you was to limit the time period that someone can serve in an acting capacity.
Right.
And that was passed to where a person is limited to 1 year in an acting capacity now, whereas prior administrations could put someone in an acting capacity, not bring an ordinance before the city council, and that person could serve indefinitely until that mayor decided to replace them or that mayor was voted out. And so the acting capacity, even though it's a way to circumvent the council and not bring it to a vote before us, you did limit it to 1 year. You agreed with the concept. I had 2 previous administrations refuse to even write the ordinance. You had no problems having Mr. Zirkle write the ordinance, draft it, and bring it to a vote. So I want to bring that out first and foremost in this discussion. Second thing is I did mention to you that among the things that Director Mahoney, at the point in time that Mayor Houston appointed him,
that I did bring up the fact that with his lack of experience in that particular department, that I felt that at the time there was discussion about what the pay grade was going to be, and I'm sorry to do this to you again, Mark, but I had mentioned then that, you know, bringing him in at a higher rate of pay than what the outgoing public works director with 20 plus years of experience was doing sent a bad message. And Mark has more than earned every raise he's got, and he completely earns the salary he has now. I have nothing but compliments for what he's done with public works. He has completely proven his position. My one statement on your hiring of Janet Kirby is that I feel that you're bringing her in at a higher salary level than what a person with no experience in that immediate field should have been brought in at. That has been my one complaint, and I will air that publicly to you even here right now. When you look back at the previous salaries that the Convention and Visitor Bureau directors have received, if I'm guessing correctly on the starting times, Fred Puglia started in 2011 at 107. Tim Farley left in 2011 making 104. Gina Gimberling, I believe, started at 103 in 2014, and she had a couple dozen years of experience. Scott Dahl, you were bringing him in at 105 to 110, and he had years of experience with Hotel Lodging Association and the other things. This is not a statement against Janet Kirby. It's a statement of, if I'm applying for a job and I don't have the relevant experience in that job, I expect that they're going to put me at a lower starting salary than someone else. So that is the end of my soapbox on that one. When it comes to executive versus legislative functions, you ran for the big seat, you get to make personnel decisions. That's not an alderman's decision. You put the names out there, and if we approve them, great. If we don't, then that's something you'll have to deal with. In this case of an acting, you've limited it to 1 year. You come back through, we have the election next April. It'll be your decision whether to bring her forward as an ordinance to the next council or the next mayor's decision. But it's a decision that reflects on you, not on this body. They are your choices, they are your hires, they are your people. Right. If she succeeds, it looks good on you. If they bomb, it looks bad on you. That's not on us. And that is why it is not a legislative function for us to do personnel decisions. We don't hire, we don't fire, we don't set salaries. Getting into technical details, Director McCarty, if we make this cut of $100,000, what is the fund source for this money?
Well, this is Fund 21, the Hotel Motel Tax Fund.
So that money would then still sit in hotel motel tax, and it would only really be available for Convention and Visitors Bureau activities. It does not, I just want to make a public point, it does not go back to general revenue. Correct?
That is correct. My understanding is it's just simply a transfer from one set of lines to another.
Right, and some of the people in the public who have talked to me did not understand that. Oh, of course, maybe we should cut that money and put it back in here. We can use it on roads. We can use it on sidewalks. No, that's not where that money goes. This is dedicated money that goes toward Convention and Visitors Bureau. It is not money that can be used elsewhere. Mr. Zirkle, in the city code, do we have anything set up in there that requires, for example, that the police chief have been a police officer, the fire chief have been a fireman? Do we have requirements for degrees for people in the different positions other than potentially CWLP?
Generally, there are not specific job qualifications except in some very limited circumstances. One of them is with fire chief, because of the labor contracts, has to be within a sworn member of the fire department. With the chief of police, does not require that it come from within the department.
Because we actually had discussion at one point with a previous mayor that I served under where they were looking at someone for police chief who was not a policeman and never had been. So I guess my point simply is, and I'm not attacking any of my fellow aldermen, I'm not attacking the mayor, I'm not attacking the acting director for CVB. My statement simply is, I think that the starting salary was too high for someone with a different set of skills, that they should have to prove themselves before they start making a six-figure salary. I think that it is an executive function, not a legislative function for hiring and firing. It reflects on you, not on this body. And I think that if we want to make change, we have to make the change at the city code level where we start requiring degrees or experience or other things for these positions. Right now, they're not there. So for me, it's a technical, I'm looking at it from what the rules are, what the procedures are. It's your choice to hire her. It's your choice to put her in as acting, and it's your responsibility as mayor to do that. So I will back your decision to do what you want to do because that's the power of your position. And I hope you're right.
Alderman Redpath?
I don't have anything against Janet Kirby. In fact, there were several phone calls made on her behalf by prominent people in the city about her quality. It's nothing to do with that. It has to do with the experience that we are looking for as someone to hit the ground running. Person that has to be able to go out there and compete with Champaign and Peoria and Bloomington and Rockford on how to bring different conventions to the city. Another issue that has probably stymied a few people is the residency thing. And you know, I know that I can ask you this, but you're going to say, I'm not going to do it, but maybe we ought to extend the residency out to the county. And we've already went through two people, and Scott Dahl is very qualified. And I know there's other departments right now. I've talked to directors as of early as a couple hours ago that said they're losing people because of the residency stuff. I always want to hire somebody from Springfield first. That's the most important thing to us. But sometimes we can't find the quality of the qualifications in people that are there. So that might be something we need to consider. I know you're not going to do it. I just thought I'd throw it out there to you. Thanks.
Yeah, and actually, Scott Dahl said he would move in eventually, and Janet had said that as well. So the other part that I will throw out there is contractual. I know she said she wouldn't care. I know Val Yazel, she's on contract, so that's the other option with regards to that. Alderwoman DeCenso.
I echo Alderman Redpath's statements. I don't have any problem with Ms. Kirby personally. I have worked in tourism for 15 years. I do know the players. I had calls from all over the state all weekend long. What is going on in Springfield? Why would you hire someone with absolutely zero tourism experience? The ICCVB spring meeting is going on right now in Springfield. It's for someone who's been involved in this industry and it's built on relationships, it's very frustrating to watch. And again, this is nothing against Ms. Kirby. I'm frustrated with you. And I wish you would have, come to the 10 people sitting around here and saying, do you know of anyone? Do you, as I've said before, we want to work with you and we're here to help. And there is some expertise around this horseshoe in certain areas. And, we're only as successful as everybody else is.
I agree. I appreciate that. Alderman McMenamin.
Janet Kirby has an outstanding resume, and she's done a fantastic job with the town hall meetings in coordinating and fielding all the questions and being receptive and understanding the questions and so forth in all 10 wards. The issue is we want someone with expertise. We want someone who's going to come in for the long haul and build a team, because we've got a great shortage right now of personnel in the tourism area, and the residency is important. Our city code does say every cabinet member will be a resident. So, it's up to the city council to respect what our code says and to not give a pass on that. And this city council is not firing or hiring anybody. We're doing what the code gives us, which is the power of the purse. And we're exercising every tool at our disposal to try to move the city in the right direction. Springfield is we've got so many treasures here in Springfield of a historical nature, Lincoln, etc. And I think, Mayor, that even though it's only 11 months to the next election, I think if you've done a great job, or if you've done a solid job as mayor, you've got to act like that and go out and recruit as if I deserve re-election. And that's the way you've got to present yourself. And you got a good library director after a national search. And I think I don't know if Will is here tonight, but we can do the same thing with tourism. We don't know who might step forward, what great people might step forward to lead our tourism effort. And if we don't get someone of that caliber with the right knowledge and team building ability, and if we have to go back to Janet Kirby after the process is exhausted, we don't get anyone to step forward, I'd be happy to move this money back for that purpose. But I just think that we've got to look for the long term, and we should let the next tourism director hire those new people that are going to be hired. I don't see any sense in letting a short-termer hire those people. You want the team building to take place with the next permanent director. So I think Janet Kirby's an outstanding individual, and this should not in any way reflect on her reputation and her standing in the community, because she's got a very positive standing in the community.
Thank you. Alderman Donlin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With any ordinance, I think, in this one in particular, I want to ask myself, what are the ramifications? So I guess what happens, I want to better understand, what happens if this ordinance does pass? Does that mean that the funds aren't there to have an individual in that position?
That's Director McCarty can answer that.
I said, or I asked, if this ordinance passes and the funds are transferred and moved as specified in the ordinance, what are the ramifications? What happens? Are the funds there to have a person in this position or not?
There are enough vacancies and enough funds and appropriations in there that should you decide to move the $100,000, the mayor could still move forward with the hiring. There would be sufficient appropriation. The funds themselves could not be transferred because they're going to an awards and grants line, but irrespective of that, there should still be enough appropriations within the personal services line to make the hire.
So I guess the next logical question is, Mayor, if this were to pass, what is your intention?
If this passes, that's what I'll have to reevaluate.
Fair enough.
Because there's a sales director position. I think Alderman McMinimum alluded to it. We did withhold interviewing that person because Scott Dahl was coming on, and it's just moved everything back. And so it's just a matter of how much longer do you want to wait.
And I guess my final question is to the sponsors, and I'm not being critical. I just want to better understand what is the emergency nature of the ordinance.
Well, I think we wanted to send an immediate idea to the mayor that instead of putting someone in place and having that process go forward, we wanted to immediately communicate other courses of action to follow on this particular position.
Any other discussion? Alderman Fulgenzi.
Yes, I've been reluctant to say anything about this because I think Janet Kirby would be an excellent choice. But one thing I don't understand is you have this on emergency passage, and all you've ever done is complain about emergency passage ordinances. That's all I've got to say.
I haven't.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of the ordinance, vote yes. Those opposed, vote no. The voting is now open. And the ordinance fails, 6 voting yes, 4 voting no. Chair will entertain a motion to suspend the rules and place on first reading for emergency passage agenda number 2018-250.
So moved.
Been moved and second. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion to suspend the rules and place agenda number 2018-250 on first reading, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Chair will entertain a motion to place agenda number 2018-250, resolution requesting temporary closure of a portion of Illinois State Route 55, 6th Street from St. Joseph to Stevenson Drive for the Church of the Little Flower Street Festival on May 25th, 2018, for the Office of Public Works for emergency passage.
So moved.
Second. Been moved and second. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion vote yes. Those opposed vote no. The voting is now open. And the ordinance passes 11 voting yes, none voting no. Chair will entertain a motion to suspend the rules and place on first reading agenda number 2018-251, an ordinance authorizing the execution of an agreement with Land of Lincoln Economic Development Corporation to provide economic development from May 1st, 2018 through February 28th, 2019 for an amount not to exceed $250,000.
So moved.
Second. Been moved and second. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Motion carries. Chair will entertain a motion to suspend the rules and place on first reading agenda number 2018-252, an ordinance to increase the number of Class D liquor licenses by one for Anchors Away Corporation doing business as Anchors Away located at 518 East Capitol Avenue.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and second. Any discussion?
Is this the old Norbandy's?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It's a gentleman that's taken over Norbandy's. He's remodeled it, and we want to hopefully get him open for the events that are going on this weekend.
Thank you.
All those in any other discussion?
Does that need to go on emergency
I
passage?
think it's
then?
emergency passage.
No.
They wanted, can they do it temporary? So they can, even if it's on,
Is this, Mr. Zirkle, you said this is there's going to be a temporary taking place?
The procedural steps, the reason this is, the timing on this is important is because of the business trying to open, but there will be a temporary liquor license issued, which the mayor may do, and the state has indicated they will honor that pending final permanent action on the part of the council to create the new license. And in turn, we literally just received some information on the background checks, which they normally do, literally yesterday afternoon.
What are the requirements for it to go on emergency passage? What will we have to do as a council to get that done?
Normally, we would try not to put ordinances on emergency passage that have not been placed on first reading first, because we're just adding this. Therefore, my concern was regarding the issue of the Open Meetings Act, because it did not appear on the publication on Friday because all the information was not complete. So in order to accommodate the business, the liquor commissioner, the mayor, has the authority to issue a temporary license, which allows him to open, go to the state. The state will honor that. They will also issue a temporary license.
Okay, will they incur any extra costs by us doing it this way?
It is my understanding that there will not be additional cost. The only issue that the state had highlighted was indirectly was there may be a tax issue which he would have to resolve. However, that would happen whether it was permanent or temporary.
Very good.
So he's actually supposed to be coming in tomorrow to meet with Todd to do the temporary.
Very good. Thank you.
any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Motion carries.
Noted.
One voting present. Is there any unfinished business come before the council?
Could I ask a question on 2018-230? Since it failed on emergency passage, does it revert back to a regular agenda?
Yes. Yes.
And is that be open for amendments at that point?
It would typically procedurally what has happened is that there is a motion for emergency passage. It does not attain the requisite number of votes. Then it simply stays on the agenda to go through what would be called the, I guess, normal procedure or normal process.
But then we can amend it if we need to.
It would be subject to amendment, as would be any other ordinance, through a committee of the whole or subsequently to the city council in, let's see, it would be, I think, June 5th. I think it would be June 5th.
Yes. Thank you.
Next city council meeting.
Any other unfinished business?
Yes, Mayor.
Alderman Hanauer?
Yeah, I had on first reading this week 2018-242. My intent was going to be to ask for emergency passage for it. It's my understanding that it's the Bright New Day TIF and loan. I'm a little confused because and maybe, and Mr. Zirkle, if you can explain it to me, because I was told that I couldn't go on emergency passage because I didn't list it as emergency passage. Were the two that we just passed on emergency, were they listed for emergency passage on Friday?
The one regarding, you mean the one that did not achieve emergency?
No. On 2018-250 and 251, I believe, we just passed on emergency passage. And they had not.
There was only one on emergency passage, was the resolution. It's not an ordinance.
What? This was a resolution, and then I thought the ordinance.
I'm sorry, the transfer ordinance was listed for emergency passage on the agenda.
But what about
made it within the timeline?
What about 251? That was. There was 250 and 251 that we just did on emergency.
It is the 251 is the resolution.
250 is the resolution, right?
No, it did not. That was just placed on first reading. That was not emergency passage.
All right.
250 was emergency.
Okay.
And I do apologize. The one regarding the resolution is street closing, but we literally did not get that until today.
Well,
so
I just wanted to bring up. I've got 2018-242. What that's going to do. Originally, I was going to ask for emergency passage. I was told we couldn't do that. What this ordinance is going to do is pull back the loan and the TIF money from Bright New Day. It appears that ship is sunk. I was doing it more just to try to protect our TIF money and that. So I guess we'll just go through its regular course, and in 2 weeks we'll vote it and that. But I was just a little confused. We were going pretty quick there, and it's been a long night. So
real quick, Director Yazel, is there anything your office can do to make sure that these funds are not touched? I think it's pretty much fairly clear that the will of this council is to freeze this operation.
Absolutely. There's nothing that's coming in, and if it were coming in, we'd have to review everything. So there's absolutely no way.
And the ordinance that was passed was contingent on the tax credit closing, which has not taken place, and it would have required a three-party sign-off on any expenditures.
Right.
So
I agree with Alderman Hanauer about the concerns, and if your office.
I can look you right straight in the eye and tell you with confidence nothing is going to go out.
Thank you.
Alderman Senor?
Does this ordinance actually have any weight? I mean, because since the project's not moving and the requests have to be authorized by your office anyway, will this ordinance add anything to or take anything away from what can happen?
I defer to legal on that. I'm not.
Take away
I don't think it's
all the appropriation to
right. Just yes.
Unallocates it when an ordinance passes. They allocate the TIF funds on paper where it sets it aside.
But it still has to be approved by her office, correct?
Mm-hmm. No, but wouldn't it put the money back in the? It'll put the money back in the.
But there's no actual
money been taken out.
Transferring until an expenditure comes through.
Right. It hasn't been taken out, but it's been obligated.
It's obligated.
So
that's
it's the same as being taken out.
But if the tax credits aren't approved, then there's not going to be any approval
But
of
it's
funds
next
anyway.
week. This week is, last week we were going to hear next week.
And again,
this week we did hear from
going on, and that's why
we did hear from the bank that Corporation Counsel. You want to shed light on that?
Well, again, there's the original. You may recall the original schedule called for the tax credit closing to occur by the end of February, by March 1st. That did not happen. In turn, that's when the element about a potential new investor to take it over came in, and that also has not materialized. The most recent communication from the bank has been, I would characterize as negative as to the project. Would that be a proper way to say it? And so it's not unusual for these complex with so many moving parts for them to end up being delayed, but the original schedule called for the closing to be by the end of February. That did not happen. So in every technical way, and I think we've had this discussion before, there is a technical default, failure to perform. The mayor, when this first came up about a year and a half ago, when the bank went sideways, in other words, did not renew the construction loans, then the mayor put a hold on all the funds for a lack of performance. That's allowed under the contract. So the city has followed the contract through the process, extended the time, allowed a time for the tax credit closing, which then did not happen. So technically the project is in default, and we're within the mayor acted within his authority to declare a default or to even terminate the contract. The council's within its authority to revoke the ordinance in light of the non-performance. And right now, the various banks, U.S. Bank was going to buy the $2.2 million in the tax credits. Once the ordinance takes place, then the tax credit option is then foreclosed. And presently, Bankers Trust, who owns the primary mortgage, has not indicated a willingness to really proceed, but this is going to bring it all to a head.
Well, and what brought this up was just, and I don't want to delay us any more than we've been here a long time tonight, but what brought this up was they were trying to sell Bright New Day. And my concern is we did this based on the people that owned Bright New Day, and I don't want to be able to, I don't want this to go, if it gets sold, and I want to make sure that they have to reapply for the TIF, because it could be a situation where we still don't think it's going to work, and they could be going for the loan and everything else. And I just want to make sure that as Chris pointed out, I don't want anything to happen on this. I think the city needs to reallocate the TIF money back to TIF, so we will have roughly $2 million associated that we can use on projects that hopefully will go strong for downtown, and also to definitely take away that loan. That was my intention.
And Corporation Counsel can correct me if I'm not correct. With regards to that, we'd have to come back with an ordinance. If there's a different party involved, even with Blackline, I think we would have had to come back with a different ordinance because the ownership structure would have changed. And so Bright New Day would have been a minority partner in that. So I believe that would have had to take council approval.
And the sole reason that I think that issue via the bank was being looked at is because the tax credits were tied or are tied to the entity Bright New Day. So it would be the same as another company buying shares to finish a project. However, we told them in the initial meeting it would be subject to review by the council.
Right. Thank you.
Alderman Proctor.
Yeah, this is in Ward 5, and this project has been a Hail Mary since, probably what, year and a half, 2 years that I got contacted about it. And so it's probably appropriate now to deallocate these funds, put it back in the pot, because there's a lot more people kicking the tires for downtown and have that available. My question, I guess, just bring it forward tonight, and maybe we can get an answer next week and the week after when we're going through this. I think there's probably $1 million that was already spent on this. Is there options to maybe try to claw that back that we could look at as we're going over this ordinance? You don't have to answer it now, but maybe have a strategy in place or something.
No, I don't think there's a way to. I think that was where grant funds that work was provided. Is that correct?
I will look at that, but the bank did a pretty significant review via Evan Lloyd of work that was actually done. So it is very properly documented of the amounts that have been spent, because the bank was concerned about the $3.1 million that the bank has already invested into the project. So they did a pretty substantial review of the status of the project, how much his work is done, what's it take to finish.
Did this start under the Houston administration? When did this start?
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Mr. Clerk, if Alderman Hanauer will have me, I'd like to be a co-sponsor.
Okay.
Is there any new business come before City Council?
Yes.
Alderman Proctor, then Alderman Donlin.
Just really quick, also, that since we've been talking about downtown, there's a lot going on downtown this week if you're looking for things to do. Farmers Market is opening they open actually tomorrow, but they're having the grand opening on Saturday. Pride Fest is going on. The Springfield Art Fair is going on, and the Susan G. Komen Race for the Cure. So there's a lot going on downtown. Come on downtown. Thank you.
We got boat races at the lake.
And boat races at the
Where?
We're at, Alderman.
Over at my
Old
boat
Marina.
dock. The old marina, there you go. The old marina.
Alderman Donlin.
Good one.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Clerk, I would like to be added as a co-sponsor to 2018-243. It's on first reading under general city business. Thank you.
Will do.
The one I asked you about as well.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Then I think it's next council meeting, since we changed it to Alderman Hanauer, myself, we won't be there. We're going to, on the Chamber, City and County, Washington, D.C. trip to meet with our legislative representatives as well as department heads associated with various needs of the city, including infrastructure, like Hilltop Road.
Really?
And then
I got hammered again this year.
with regards to community development block grant funds and FRA and others. So
Guess I got to watch my
we'll give you a report when we get back.
What about Cokie Mill, Mayor?
I will have to check.
The county section of it especially.
I know Archer Elevator's on there, and MacArthur. And then tomorrow morning, I was asked to be part of a panel to present to the, can't remember which committee at the Capitol, with regards to the local government distributive fund. So Director McCarty and myself will be over there to express the impact that does have if it is extended for another time, another year. Any other new business?
Mayor,
Alderman Tyler?
Police Chief, you don't have to say anything, but I would just like to extend that, a number of people are concerned and hoping for a speedy recovery for the police officer who was hit the other night. I'm glad that the damage was limited to just a broken foot and a broken leg, not minimizing that. That's still going to be months and months of healing and recovery and rehab, but I'm glad that it wasn't a loss of life.
Thank you. Any other new business? Anybody wish to address the city council? Yes, you come up and state your name and address for the council. We'd appreciate it.
Tracy Gregg. I'm homeless. Anyway, what you were saying, my church is having on Sunday at 4 o'clock for anybody that wants to go. They're having a praise dance, and you can pay $5 and you can win 3 different types of raffles. And it starts at 5 o'clock. It starts at 4 o'clock on Saturday. It's at 2 Timothy at 1101 East Pine Street. And everybody's welcome to come. And also, I wanted to mention about me and my husband go to McDonald's every day about 5 o'clock, and there's weeds that's over by CVS that is not safe. I mean, tree branches like down and stuff like that. So if somebody can go check it out.
Yeah, we'll have Public Works.
What McDonald's?
Over
It's on
by
South Grand?
McDonald's on South 6th.
Okay.
It's
Yep.
by the old
Over on South
CVS.
Grand.
Yep.
Yep. Anybody else wish to address the council? Is there a motion for adjournment?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Opposed, say nay. We're adjourned.
Can't do it. I can't do it.
Hey,
I know you do.
What we've done is we put together a solar and researched it just recently. Put together the researched and found out